It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here. We're going to learn a little more about the Surface event coming up next week. Of course, we'll be streaming that live. We'll also talk about the brand new xCloud, Microsoft's cloud gaming. It's just around the corner. And Paul will help you become a programmer. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 640, recorded Wednesday, September 25th, 2019. A billion pages. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Epson's EcoTank printers. Kiss expensive cartridges goodbye. Add an Epson EcoTank printer to your home or office. EcoTank comes with a ridiculous amount of ink. Just fill and chill. Check out Epson.com/EcoTankLeo to learn more. It's time for Windows Weekly. Let's get ready to Windows. With this is a show where we cover Microsoft in great detail. Endlessly. In endless, obsessive detail. Mm-hmm. That's what the New York Times once said about Twit. And,
are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah, that was back
Yikes.
when... Yeah. It was Virginia Heffernan. I'll never forget her.
Yeah.
She wrote, Twit covers technology in endless, obsessive details.
That's not a bad thing.
No, I celebrated it. That's what we do here. We care. We care deeply.
I don't think it's bad.
We care far too
We
much.
don't know about what, but it's a lot of caring.
That there is Mary Jo Foley from allaboutmicrosoft.com, her ZDNet blog. Paul Thurrott is to her right, left, right. Your left, her right. And he is, yeah, see, Mary Jo even got it wrong. And he's sitting right next to her. He is the guy in charge at Thurrott.com, THURROTT.com. Although his grip is loosening.
Yep.
That's why Bill Gates didn't name Microsoft Gatesland.
Jeez.
Okay, have you been watching that thing?
So that was my next question. What do you think?
Don't make me go on a rant here, because
I'm not watching
this show is terrible.
Oh, no. Well, Bill did it,
terrible.
right? It's like a hagiography.
Yeah.
It's like written by
It's
Bill
a promotional
Gates.
thing,
Yeah, it's
right?
promotional, yeah.
If I have to listen to his wife explain one more time, like, you don't understand how his brain works. He compartmentalizes and he blah, 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 blah. It's like it is like the continuation of the myth, and it's awful.
Yeah.
They did a whole second episode about his partner who he screwed out of 50% of Microsoft. Never even mentioned that, you know?
Yeah.
And then he's sad because he didn't get to see him at the end.
Aw.
Didn't get to say goodbye.
Who's
Didn't
that?
get to give
Paul
all those
Allen?
billions back. Yeah.
He screwed Paul Allen? Paul Allen was the second richest man in the world for a while. He should have been bigger.
Fault of Gates. Yeah, the initial split on Microsoft was 64-36 in Gates' favor, even though they co-founded it. And then when Paul Allen came down with cancer, he wasn't working as much, and Bill wanted him to give some portion back because he wasn't working as hard. He's a good guy, Bill Gates.
You know, when we talk about the old Bill Gates and the new Bill Gates, this is a perfect example of that.
People don't know, and they're going to watch this documentary, and they're going to
listen. It's laudable what he's doing with his money. He had said very early on his kids were only going to get some tiny percentage. He was going to give the rest of it away in some philanthropic way. Obviously, the foundation he has is incredible. The work they're doing is incredible. I mean, there's no way to state otherwise. It's incredible. And obviously, this 3-part documentary is mostly about that. I mean, they tie stuff in from the past here and there, but it's mostly about the new stuff. And I think this is the Bill Gates that nobody, probably knows that much about, and that's fine. But I cringe when they go back to the past and they don't just gloss over how terrible he was. Yeah. They just go flying right by it. It's tough.
Yeah,
tough. He really. So it's on Netflix.
Yep.
So a lot of people will be able to see it if they want.
Let me ruin the ending. He has not solved any of the problems yet, but he has dedicated billions and billions. It's like polio.
Yeah. He's done great things.
Just basic sanitation
gotta praise
stuff.
him for that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's incredible. The work is incredible.
Yeah. But that's what, honestly, if you're a robber baron, that's what you should do.
Yep.
Well, another thing he did, remember, he'd kind of come out and said, look, everyone who's a billionaire in the United States should give away at least half of their money immediately.
That was awesome, too. He and Warren Buffett did that.
And him and Warren Buffett, I think, were the only two that ever did it.
No, others signed up.
I think there's a lot of others. There are. Yeah.
Not Mark Zuckerberg.
Well, there were a lot that didn't. Let's put it that way. And
right.
I give him a lot of credit for that effort as well. And it's neat that him and Warren Buffett have been friends, I mean, for 30 years or more, whatever the time frame is. But
bridge partners, playing bridge.
Well, but Warren Buffett has now pumped a huge portion of his own personal fortune into this Gates Foundation. Like that's amazing. That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, good on you.
Wasn't even in the list.
Good on him, man.
No.
Now I'm going to talk about some of the comedian specials I don't like on Netflix.
Tell us which ones we should watch. How about that? We went to see...
Bill Burr, obviously.
Bill Burr's great. We went to see Tater Salad, Ron White.
What's that?
Ron White.
Yeah.
And we had just seen his special. And he did exactly the same jokes.
This is the guy who drinks scotch on stage, right?
Yeah.
When he's...
The only difference was he was really drunk when we saw him on Friday. Only a little drunk on the TV special, but schnockered.
Like actually drunk.
Oh, well, I mean, it could be an act. It wasn't Foster Brooksy, though. It was like...
I was trying to think of his name. I love the Foster Brooks stuff was beautiful from those the roasts from the 70s.
But that was, obviously.
Yeah.
But this one, he's just like, he's sipping his tequila all night.
That's amazing.
It's pretty wild. Pretty wild. But that's not what we're here to talk about, is it, kids?
No. It should be, though.
Well, the Bill Gates thing, I think, is germane.
Yes.
And probably worth watching. Apparently, you get to watch him get dressed, which was...
I don't recall that part of it. You do get to watch him play tennis, and man, is he an athletic fellow.
Reverb Mike in our chat room says... Fast forward a few minutes to miss Bill Gates getting dressed. He couldn't get dressed before the show starts for some reason. So, so he had to get dressed. Ow.
But let me tell you how his brain works. He
compartmentalizes. We can't even say it.
It's like, how do you know how his brain works?
That's how smart he is.
Oh, God.
That's how smart he is. He's a compartmentalizer.
He's a smart guy. There's no doubt about it.
Listeners, endure Patch Tuesday by consuming... your cocktail, Patch Tuesdays.
Going to show this picture. There's a set of pictures. Yeah. So Jeff Ullman emailed me today to say that at work this month they endured our patch, our monthly Patch Tuesday tradition by making my wife's cocktail the Patch Tuesday.
That is so cute, and they look good.
Yeah, they use some good maple syrup. I think it's like maple syrup is what that's supposed to be.
Bourbon barreled maple syrup.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is pretty good.
I hope it doesn't look like they did the egg white bit, although maybe they did. Maybe I'm just not seeing it.
What's that? That's probably egg whites in the back there, right?
Yeah, in the measuring cup.
Yeah,
see it?
Yeah,
Yep.
Pretty, and there they are, barely able to stand. Nice.
Yeah, if the woman in the picture has her hand on her head, like,
wait till tomorrow, honey. It's going to be worse.
I do want to comment on the snack portion here. It doesn't live up, I think, to the drink portion.
Right.
But aren't those tater tots?
There's a tray of like olives.
No. These are Totino's pizza bites, I believe.
Oh.
They do have cashews the size of boomerangs, so that's good.
Yeah, what are those things?
No, those are apple rings, I think.
That looks like something that was extruded.
It doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. And what is in the lower left-hand corner? Let's just not talk about that. Is that caramelized bananas? I'm sorry. We shouldn't mock.
No, I think
it's interesting. I mean, I'm just fascinated they did this. And by the way,
me too.
I mean this honestly. It's an excellent cocktail.
I can't wait to have one. I'm coming over. I'm going to be in. Oh, you're not in Boston anymore.
Yeah, I'm not there.
No, maybe we'll make them next week when you're here.
So I want to just say, Jeff works in Campbell, California, near the Prune Yard, which is a very poorly named shopping center in Silicon Valley, the Prune Yard. But they named it the Prune Yard because before Silicon Valley was Silicon Valley, it was prune orchards as far as the eye could see. And so he's actually where he stands right now is where the prune trees I always thought you grew plums and then dried them, and apparently you grew them as prunes.
You actually grow these wrinkled little fruits.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're special plums made for prunes. I don't know.
Well, there's Italian prune plums. Have you ever had those?
Oh, yes. Maybe that's what it was. But they always say it was the prune orchards is how they describe it. And, of course, the beautiful, because he left the location information in his photo.
Nice.
So we know where you work, Jeff. Nice. That's great. Thank you for drinking the drink.
I know. It's good stuff.
It ain't Kool-Aid.
Yep.
Microsoft.
It looks like Kool-Aid, though. That's how you get it through.
It's just Kool-Aid, opposite.
Giant picture and say, oh, yeah.
It's just Kool-Aid. So let's talk a little bit about, I saw this announcement.
Stuff.
I don't know what it is. Project xCloud. What is that? I bet you Mary Jo Foley could tell us.
I can, actually. This is the game streaming service from Microsoft.
Oh, I guess Paul Thurrott could probably tell us. Oh, no, he's drinking.
Well,
no, I want to
you,
hear this.
It runs on Azure.
See, that's why it's Azure.
The only reason I care about this in the least is this is a new big workload on Azure. It's how Microsoft's going to stream games to multi-devices, starting with Android.
What? That's how you lead on the Xbox story? It's going to be a workload on Azure? That's your version of
That's the story, Morning Glory.
That's the only reason I care. And that's the only reason Microsoft cares, by the way.
Oh, man.
It's an enterprise company, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I know. Just drive that stake in further. Open the window so the sun comes in. It'll be the end of me.
No, so it's exciting because this is finally starting to happen. I was looking when we first were writing about this a couple years ago, right? When they started teasing it originally. Right. Last fall, they said we're starting to test it internally. It's running. Some of it is running in our Quincy, Washington data centers already. So yeah, Here it comes. That's all you need to know.
No, that's not all you need to know. There's a little bit more.
Okay,
so you can sign up now for the public beta, which will start in October. The first version of the first release will be Android only, meaning obviously you need an Android phone to do it.
That's weird. Really?
Yeah. I mean, eventually it's going to be obviously completely heterogeneous, right? It's going to be different device types. And I think this probably just has to do with whatever, you have to have some kind of client software to make this happen. I assume you'll use it usually with a Xbox controller over Bluetooth. And they're picking people. So you fill out a very short form. It's basically name, email address, what kind of phone do you have, what's your mobile service, and they'll get back to you. So when I signed up,
sign up, right?
With the OnePlus. Yeah, you definitely should. Definitely.
Because I have an Android phone, so I could.
Yep. And I knew someday, Mary Jo, I know we're going to get you on Xbox.
And you know what? I could like clock latency levels, and do some big things like that.
I feel like you're just not really coming at this from the right direction, but okay.
I know there are games too, but who cares about those? Yep. I mean, I care about the service, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, why is Microsoft doing this if not to show off the power
Azure.
Of the xCloud?
Yep.
Right?
Azure. They're doing it for Azure, guys.
Well, the power of the Xbox service, which does run on Azure. Yes. I'll talk a little bit about why they're doing this a little bit later, maybe. Let me think about that. Yeah, because we have an Xbox thing coming up at the end as usual, and what this ties into is just how the business has done historically, and why this will make so much more sense for Microsoft when the Xbox business essentially is a service and not reliant on hardware sales.
Right. And I can throw in a couple code names, by the way. This isn't Microsoft's first game streaming rodeo. Remember Project Rio? That was a game streaming service they attempted and showed off, I think, at one of the company meetings. And then there was Arcadia, another time when they were showing off a game streaming service. Neither ever came to market.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm not sure I knew about either one of those.
You knew Arcadia.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a long time ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Arcadia is from 2014. Yep.
But,
third time's the charm.
Well, the time wasn't right. I don't think it's Microsoft's fault. I don't think the timing was good, was it?
No, and also the cloud has evolved a lot since then.
Yes. That's right.
And that's why Google and Microsoft and Sony and
everybody,
all other people
really,
are doing
all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Google Stadia will probably be coming out even sooner, I would think. I don't know. We'll see. October 15th, is there a big event?
I thought, for some rereason, I thought that was coming out in November, but maybe I'm...
Well, they might say October 15th. November 1st, you could play.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
I don't remember because there was a Stadia Founders Edition pre-sale that I thought was for November, but it doesn't super matter. Okay. I mean, look, video gaming is a bigger industry than movie making in Hollywood. It's huge, right? So the problem is, to date, to get into this business, you had to do what Microsoft did, which is you come from behind, you start making hardware, you lose a lot of money, and you kind of build up the relationships, get the game studios going, get developers on board. It's a huge investment. Obviously, some of that work still has to happen. We have only a service, but when you can cut out the hardware R&D, I mean, it's a completely different situation. So it's not surprising that all the major cloud players and game makers are going to be involved in some way as this thing switches over to service. So
cool.
We shall see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you have it. That's it. That's all there is to say. It's finally happening.
Yep.
Windows. Let's do some Windows 10.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
Yeah. Let's.
Come on, man.
I seem to,
remember
I don't know if you guys notice this, but I seem to often get into the situation where I get shot for being the messenger. Right. So in this case, there is a guy who used to work for Microsoft who is turned into like a YouTuber, and he has created a video. He's created a lot of videos. He has videos about, programming and whatever technology topics. I think they're kind of goofy, but whatever. He can do his own thing. But he was part of that test team at Microsoft that got laid off in 2014, 2015, whatever the year was. And he has now published a video explaining why the quality of Windows 10 has been so bad over the past 4 years. And if you can get past the kind of presentation, I find it, like I said, a little painful, but it's very clear that he is absolutely on the money with what has gone down, with what has happened there, which is that rather than having human beings running automated tests, they have virtual machines and they have telemetry. And they used to have meetings every week where people would come and say, can we move this build up the chain? And people would explain why they could or could not support that. And that just kind of, created a higher quality situation than what we see today, which is they just ship a build and they ship it publicly to insiders, of which there aren't really that many. And the testing just doesn't happen on the same level. A lot of, of course, and this is not anything against the insiders. It's not their fault. But, I think for a lot of these people, you're not going to send in a bug report unless something is catastrophic, right? It's, or particularly annoying, perhaps. And it's hard for them to duplicate it because they don't get those massive dump files that, Microsoft used to require when there were problems. So it's just it's kind of a self-replicating, hey, we saved a bunch of money, but whoops, and I think history speaks for itself. We've had 3 major releases of Windows 10 that did not go very well at all.
Yeah, I saw that guy's video pop up, and there are a few people who were laid off as part of that round in 2014. That happened under Terry Myerson, and I'm looking back at what I wrote about it because the way they explained what they did was they said instead of having dedicated testers, program managers and development engineers are going to be taking on new responsibilities, quote unquote, like testing hypotheses, so that they would be writing their own tests and testing against their own tests.
They actually said that? That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this notion in Microsoft of self-hosting, right? Where you are running the latest build to see if they're, dogfooding, whatever you want to call that. And his contention is that in today's Microsoft, like a lot of people at Microsoft just don't do that anymore because they're not really concerned with what's going on with the client. They've got their own things they're worried about,
Yeah, Right.
Do you think he's got an axe to grind, though? I mean,
yeah. I mean, of course. I was thinking that too. If I got laid off by my employer, I would be very angry about it too.
Right.
Okay, except for one thing. By the way, you can't discount that aspect of it. He didn't make this when he got laid off. He made this 5 years later.
Yeah.
This is the 117th video he's made or something. Like, this was not high on his priority list. Like, I think more important though is look, like I said, I find his style a little hard to digest, but
it's a YouTube thing. You just wouldn't understand.
Yeah, right. I'm not of this generation or whatever. That's fine. But I don't think it's fair to discount something solely on the basis of the fact that he may, like, for example, the thing that you just showed. Like, I feel like he's on the wrong side of the Windows 10 privacy debate, for example. But I'm looking at this objectively. I think it's clear to me. I mean, it's very clear that he's correct about what's going on with Windows 10. And like I said, history speaks for itself.
It kind of makes sense, right? Yeah.
Well, Mary Jo has information that corroborates what he was saying about what has happened inside of Microsoft under Terry Myerson, right? So, for good, bad, or indifferent, like if you want to be cynical about it, and I can be, I mean, Terry took over Windows and it was like, how can we save some money, and impact the bottom line in a positive way? And unfortunately, that's kind of short-term thinking, right? And they've had they come around to the teams.
They come around to teams and they're like, okay, you need to cut X percentage of your people. You choose where you want to cut.
Right.
Well, that was that. What was that stack ranking thing that they used to do?
Yeah,
was that kind of like
gone.
that?
That's mostly gone.
That was a Steve Ballmer.
That was awful. That was like Survivor. Get voted off the island.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't think they're ever going to bring dedicated testers back. Do you?
No, I don't. No.
Nope.
No. And for whatever it's worth, I will say, when they started the Windows Insider program, one of the things I really liked about it was part of an effort by Terry and his team to kind of reverse the secrecy-based strategy of their predecessors. And I thought that was an important and good thing to do. And I think opening up Windows development to the community is a good thing, generally speaking. But what we've seen happen since then, of course, is that, they get weird about it. It's like, well, we're going to do a lot of A/B testing. And so you're signing up for this specific ring. You're supposed to get all the new features in whatever version of Windows. And now you're not getting them. And I think they've, over time, because of these changes, which probably were the result of the quality is not where we wanted it, they've kind of made it bad for everybody.
That's kind of what always happens, though. The cruft accumulates. And so over time, what seemed like a good idea, and then you add something else, and you add something else. It was
done for the right reason.
Done for the right reasons, and then...
This is the McDonald's principle, right? Ray Kroc didn't invent McDonald's to make America fat. He was solving a problem,
Right.
And he was latching onto a trend of the day where people all of a sudden were in their cars a lot, and we need this new type of restaurant, And the Insider program, I don't mean, I'm not equating the Insider program with obesity, but I mean but rather with the notion that but it literally was created for the right reason, and it still is a good idea. It is a good idea. But for example, one of the things I have said, you remember from our debates about things like Windows 10 home users can't delay updates, and weren't able to do that for a long time. I had said for a long time, like, look, they have enough data now. They don't need to make these people guinea pigs. But, as it turns out, I mean, they might have held back on not giving them that capability for so long because they really didn't have that data.
Right.
The activity level in the Insider program was probably not high enough to do that. But then you have this unfortunate situation where your own customers are your guinea pigs, literally. And that's the phrase we've used, right? Where if in the old days, Microsoft would ship a version of something. It was a version of Windows. It was a service pack, whatever it was. This thing had been tested to some degree, and it just went out. It didn't go out to little groups. It didn't go out in this kind of weird way where it's like, well, we're going to phase it in and we're going to see how it goes, and if it goes bad, we're going to pull it back. Like how inept in a way do you have to be so unsure of your own software that you can't just ship it like you used to be able to? It's kind of a weird situation. But so you're literally making actual customers guinea pigs.
But when you think of all the combinations and permutations of, what version are you running and what hardware and how old is the hardware and what do you have hooked up to the hardware, I don't think they can ever test everything, obviously, or even close to everything, right?
But what's changed?
Job.
Windows has always had that millions of combinations of hardware configurations, whatever. The only thing that's really changed between now and like 1995, aside from the sheer number of machines, right, is now they ship a new version of Windows every 6 months.
Right.
That's
so you're
why
running
there are
so
problems.
many more different ones, right?
Yeah, they have to test things against so many different versions of Windows now.
Right.
Like in the past, Windows would just sit out there for years.
Right.
And then it would be updated. And when they updated it, I'm not saying it always went well, but there was this understanding that this thing has been thoroughly tested. Now it's like the Netscape model. You know, it's like, we'll see we'll fix it later. You know, and you could come out on this any side you want. I mean, but I think we could all agree something has been lost quality-wise here. It's for as good as you might think Windows 10 is, and I love Windows 10. I believe that Windows 10 is the best version of Windows. But there's that but part of the sentence where you're like, but these other things, you know? And I think that the quality is something, it's just a revolving target. It's every version, it seems like there's a new problem. Now, this version, 1909 or whatever we're calling 19H2, so, well, it hasn't really been released, so we'll see what happens. But it's a relatively minor update. It shouldn't have the potential for as many problems as the big updates they've shipped in the past.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
They should do this all the time. You know, they should ship less. They should ship less on a slower schedule.
I don't think any company has ship less as its slogan.
As its motto.
No, but actually, that's probably not true, right? So it's not something that you advertise, but for a legacy, mature product line like Windows, there is no cause to ship this thing as often as they do. You know, Apple only ships Mac OS once a year. And actually, this latest release is shipping kind of late for some reason, right? Later than usual. No one is asking for 2 Mac OS releases every year. It's a mature product, too. I mean, how does Linux handle this? I know there are multiple releases per year. There are different kind of distributions and so forth. But
you also have...
But they also have that notion of long-term support.
They do, and that's several years.
Yep.
I don't know. That's a good...
And I know Microsoft does, too, but not for everybody.
Right.
That's the problem.
I think it's a very different system, however. You know, I mean, because it's open source, you have a bunch of people sending updates, and then you have people reviewing that, and then you have the final approval. There's this whole process. It actually works surprisingly well.
Yeah, you know what's really involved in that process? You just described people.
Yeah, a lot of them.
And I think that's actually the key to this situation. There are actual eyeballs. I think, you know, we say this word telemetry so much. It's like we kind of forgot what it even means, you know. It's just automated results going back to Microsoft. And it's a tiny fraction of what they used to get from bug reports. It's really not, it's almost too undetailed to be that valuable. But it is literally all they rely on today when it comes to quality. When every time there's a problem with a feature update and they come back and say, okay, well, we figured it out, this will never happen again. Our telemetry shows that this is the most reliable version of Windows we have ever shipped. Well, your telemetry is garbage because it is clearly not the most reliable version of Windows you have ever shipped.
Yeah,
anyway, I think this guy's a goofball, but if you're concerned about Windows 10 reliability, it is worth bearing through the video and just kind of watching it and see what he says. Because I think he's right about almost all of it.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it isn't so different from what you've said all along.
No,
so.
No, but he used to work there and he knows. Yeah. I think that's the interesting thing. You know, it corroborates a lot of what we've sort of have heard elsewhere, thought, or whatever. And, you know, again, just being on the outside, even without any information at all from inside Microsoft, you can see what has happened with the Windows 10 feature updates. So if you disagree with this guy completely, which I guess some people might, just want to remind you that history is what it is. This stuff did happen. And I think, you know, well, whatever. We have our opinions about the release schedule. I think everyone here probably agrees that, and by everyone, I mean us three, that they ship too many versions of Windows now. They don't need to do this so quickly. I don't understand.
There's such minor updates. It's not like there's this emergency. What if you updated Office twice a year? That would be nutty. They don't even do that.
They are. They're updating Office twice a year.
That would be nutty.
Actually, I'm going to tell you. So, by the way, Office is right at the end of the show. Office is updated once a month.
What?
And it is updated across the board. It is unbelievable. But we'll get to that because, Office is an example of a heightened schedule for sure. And for some reason, it works. I said this. I saw Jeff Tepper and Tepper and whatever in June, I think it was, and I was like, "Please talk to the guys over Windows. You're doing something right. Like, could you talk to them? Could you? Different products for sure, but
very different."
Moving right along, although there's really no hurry. One of the highlights of the Apple TV event earlier this year in the spring was Oprah.
Really?
Coming up on stage saying, holding up an iPhone saying, 1 billion pockets, y'all. Mm. Yeah. And that was why it was so exciting for her to be doing a TV show for Apple.
Right.
Microsoft said, didn't they say it would be 1 billion Windows 10s? At some point, when did they?
Yeah, the latest date, it was supposed to be the end of 2018, if I remember correctly.
And how are they doing on that?
They're getting closer. Yeah, this week they said 900 million. Windows 10 is now on more than 900 million devices.
That's pretty good.
The vast majority are PCs, obviously, but also HoloLens and Xbox.
You guys want to do some math?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was Yusuf Mehdi who said that this is the fastest, he said the last year. Now, we don't have accurate data for the last year, but he said the last year, Windows 10 has sold has been added to new devices at a faster pace than at any time before. That's actually true. It's true even with the understanding that some of the previous numbers were inflated because, remember, Terry was counting virtual machine installs and so forth. Yeah. It's true for the last 6 months because in March they announced it was 800 million. And so we know that 100 million new Windows 10 PCs, mostly devices, whatever, have come online or whatever, been activated in the past 6 months. And that works out to 16.7 million per month, if I remember correctly, which is an interesting number because if you go back in time, we used to talk about this a lot. Back when Microsoft actually provided hard numbers for things, they used to count 20 million license sales for Windows 7 every month. And that lasted, by the way, the entire active life cycle of Windows 7 because obviously they were metering it out or whatever. Yeah. So it's really interesting. And he is correct. This is the fastest pace at which new Windows 10 machines have come on board. At least for the past 6 months. And he says for the past year, and I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
Why is that, Mary Jo?
Well,
what's changed?
I think the pace is going to start picking up and has started to, in part because of the Windows 7 migration. That actually is starting to finally affect the numbers. They said that on the last earnings call, right? I mean, we still think there are like at least 30 to 40% of people who are on Windows running Windows 7 at this point. So there's still a lot of room. There's still a lot of room for growth for Windows 10 if those people, at least if a good percentage of them migrate to Windows 10 from 7.
Yeah, with the understanding that, growth, like what growth means here is a little nebulous because in the enterprise, of course, growth for Windows 10 means net growth of 0 because you're just moving people over from one version to the other. I don't think Windows as a platform is growing, right? But if you accept the fact that there are 1.5 billion Windows, devices out in the world, 900 million of them are on Windows 10 now. So that suggests that 600 million are not, and that's a lot more Windows 10 upgrades, migrations, whatever that could come. And I don't think they all will, but there'll be some huge percentage of that certainly will.
Want to hear a funny anecdote that happened today regarding migration? So I was at lunch today and I was talking to somebody who I was having lunch with about Windows 7 and Windows 10 because, I'm a really exciting person and that's what I talk about at lunch.
Yep. I wish I was there.
When I was leaving the restaurant, a waiter who was waiting on our table came up to me and he said, "Can I ask you a question about Windows 7 to Windows 10 migration?" And I'm like, "Yep." And so he said, "Look, I also do a lot of tech on the side, and I'm still running Windows 7. Do you think I should migrate to 10? Because you know what? I don't like this forced feature update thing with Windows 10. And so I said to him,
right?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I said, I know, but you're not going to get any more security updates after January 14th, 2020. And he's like, I don't really care. And I'm like, well, you should care. He's like, no, I have like Defender software and blah, and blah. I said, yeah, but what's going to happen are all the bad guys are going to start targeting Windows 7 because they know you're not going to get any more updates and security fixes from Microsoft. He said, yeah, it's a tough decision because I really I don't want those forced upgrades from Windows 10. And so I don't know what I'm going to do. That's the kind of inertia that's working against them on this migration, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'm not saying one guy represents everyone, but we hear this a lot, right? It's not like somebody else said, it's not like enterprises, big banks or whoever who are thinking like this, but it's the enthusiasts, it's hobbyists, it's normal people, right?
Here's the thing that kind of, as you were saying this, what's striking to me is, you think back to the rationale for Windows as a service, and you think about this lofty goal of getting everyone on the same version and how much better it will be for the ecosystem if we can update everyone at once, et cetera, et cetera. But on the flip side of it, now that we're 4 years into Windows 10, and you kind of look back at these feature updates that they shipped, and sometimes there are all kinds of crazy things they put in, like all that 3D stuff and the Windows mixed reality stuff that nobody ever uses. But there were updates big and small. Right. They were all essentially new versions of Windows. It is like upgrading to a new version of Windows. So that happened like 8 times or whatever the number is. What's the benefit to us collectively as a community to this program? Like looking back on it now, 4 years later, like what did we get from that? Like what's the big change in Windows 10 that just benefits everyone is humongous that wouldn't have occurred with them just shipping security updates every month? Like what's the awesome thing that has changed that has benefited everybody? Can you think of anything? I know there's refinements and
no, you know what I would say? I think the audience that benefits the most from the faster pace is the enterprise audience because yes, you get security updates all the time if you're doing it that way, but Microsoft has added a lot of new security features like the sandboxing and some of the application guard and Defender, some of the Defender updates. So I feel like, okay, maybe they don't need it twice a year, but I feel like every 3 years would be too slow given the way the security landscape has changed.
Oh, no, okay, that's fair. I mean, it's so coincidentally over the weekend, I went down into the cellar. I dug an old computer out, sitting in a box, turned it on. It had Windows 10 version 1709, I think, on it. Yeah. And it updated to 1803, and then it never updated again. That was the end of it. And I don't know why, because some chipset thing or something, who knows. But I was looking at it, and of course, back then, like the settings app in particular is the one you really notice. It had like 4 gigantic icons, or 8, whatever the number was, some small number. And it looked really simplistic, compared to the thing we have today. Like, obviously, interfaces have evolved, features have been added, so forth. But, fundamentally, this thing is the same. It's the same operating system. It's exactly the same. It runs all the same applications. It works the same. It basically looks the same. It doesn't have dark mode, I guess. But, but again, there's a lot of lipstick on the pig in the past. If you went from XP to 7, you could tell you got something different. Windows 8 to 10, honestly, pretty close to each other if you compare them visually. They're very similar. And then, of course, Windows 10 versions on top of each other, very, very similar. So Windows hasn't aesthetically kind of changed that much since 8.1 or whatever. And that was whatever, 2 years ago, 4, 5, 6, whatever years ago. But functionally, whatever. I mean, and then you have to think about the security stuff, like and those security features you were mentioning. There's a fine to add. I mean, I guess in some ways, they forced some enterprises to ship updates more quickly to their own users than they would have liked to have done in the past. And maybe there's some benefit to that. But man, they've really just dragged the rest of us kind of kicking and screaming into this future as well. And I'm just saying, looking back on it, what did we get out of it? What was the big benefit?
Right. Was
there one? I'm curious. I don't mean this totally rhetorically, but I don't really think, I mean, I'm sure someone will write me to tell me what a jerk I am. But and that here's the obvious answer to that question.
Yeah.
But I use Windows every day, obviously, and it was interesting bringing up that old machine, and it's the same. It's the same.
Yeah.
But it's funny because when I got the new iPhone at great expense,
yeah,
it wasn't that different. I mean,
sure.
We're kind of at a peak technology for almost everything now. The big jumps are gone. Even look at Intel processors. Is there much of a difference between 5 years ago?
Oh my God, no! Are you kidding me? No, I mean, this comes up with the Surface stuff. That there'll be a 3rd generation Surface laptop, and we'll talk about this later. So I should probably hold this, but when you look at the two that have come, it's the same body. They went from dual core to quad core processors, and so that might be the big change. Plus a color change. They added black or something with the second version. These are only 2 generations of products. I realize that, but I mean, honestly, for most of us, including me, really, Mary Jo, certainly. I mean, anyone who's just like writes or browses the web and does email. I mean, quad core or dual core, who cares? Like, no, it's exactly the same computer.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, and yeah, phones are like that. I mean, but that's, that market is slowing down. I mean, in the sense that people are upgrading far less frequently. That already happened with computer users. So why are we pushing somebody up? Maybe this is, I don't know. I just don't understand. We used to get a new version of Windows when we bought a new computer. So even though Windows came out every 3 years, maybe, we might not get a new computer for 5, 6, whatever number of years. So sometimes we would just skip a version.
Right.
What was the point of making it go faster?
Yeah. I mean, you have to remember what part of Microsoft's job, in quotes, is to help OEMs sell people new PCs, right? So part of that involves the two collaborating together on new features that require more powerful processors, support for touch. Touch was like a perfect example of this. Like, nobody wanted touch on a laptop. Okay, sorry, I'm still in that camp, but but it was they went kicking and screaming into touch. Right, but then they were like, okay, so this is a new thing we can upsell people on. Like, yeah, you can touch your laptop. Woohoo! Right. So I feel like part of the reason things rev like this also is because of PC makers wanting to upsell people on new hardware. You're right. I want to be really clear. You're right. That is probably maybe the major driver. But the problem is, like, think about like automobiles, back in the day, remember the 50s, like they started adding fins to cars and stuff. That's where we're at now. We're adding fins. Like the engine doesn't matter anymore. These things go whatever they go. There's only, you can cut the prices so everyone can afford one. You can add stereos and blah, 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 whatever. But I mean, the stuff that's been added to Windows 10, aside from some core things, obviously, some of the security improvements are important, of course. But a lot of it's like fins. It's just. Paul, I have a word for you. It's not plastics. It's Alcantara.
Yeah, baby.
Right. The carpeting.
Yeah, baby.
Yes.
Alcantara.
Right? That's another example of something like, what can we do?
Spades. That's
what can we do to make this different from the way you bought a laptop before? Oh, look, now you can put your wrists on it and they won't be cold because it won't be on metal.
With shag carpeting on the ceiling. It just doesn't, it's nice, I guess.
That's yeah. The thing about that, first of all, I think we all would agree, right? They should offer that as an option. You should be able to opt out of it if you don't want it.
Yeah, even fins were an option. Come on.
There you go. And I mean, I'm in a weird, like I said, maybe I didn't just say this. I just recently brought out 2 of my Surface laptops to get some Surface dock thing going, whatever. And the first gen one I have, which is platinum, is wonderful. And the Alcantara is clean and great. And I've used that machine a ton. Wow. The newer one, which is black, I've not used as much. It is smudged all over the place. Like the Alcantara looks terrible. Oh, wow. And it's probably related to the color, I guess. It's something maybe just shows up more because the oily wrist thing, it makes it lighter or something. I don't know. But I don't know how you can ship something like that on a computer without, I mean, it's like you need years of experience to understand what this is going to look like when you're done. Yeah, right. And years of experience would have told you probably don't want to put a carpet on top of the laptop. It's like, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like I don't mind it, but I could see where a lot of people would be turned off by it.
Not me, man. I think it's
a little disco ball.
He wants his fins.
I want my fins, baby.
Those little dangly,
dingle balls.
Curtain things.
Yeah.
Whatever those were.
Dingle balls.
Dingle balls. Dingle balls.
Dingle balls, dingle balls. All right, we're going to talk about other stuff. Dev, Cloud, Surface, and Xbox. But before we do, let's talk about that thing that happens when you're in the middle of a print job. You ever notice? I mean, light bulbs don't burn out when they're off. How would you even know? Printers always run out of ink when they're printing. Printers got to print. But that's a problem if you're in the middle of an important print job and you got to go to the office supply store because you need more cartridges. So Epson came up with a better way. Yay, Epson. They're amazing EcoTank printers. Kiss those trips to the office supply store goodbye. Just add an Epson EcoTank printer to your home or your office. They're wireless. They're fabulous. They're color, all in one. They do everything, scanning, printing, copying. You can get ones that do faxing too. But the best part is when you get it home and you open up the box, there it is. An incredible amount of ink already in the box. These keyed, color-coded, keyed, so you can't do it wrong. Auto stop bottles, so you can't spill it. It was easy. I mean, I've done it a couple of times now because we have two of them. You fill up the tanks, and now you've got up to 2 years of ink in the box. That's what I'm talking about. No more running out of the ink in the middle of the job. With supersized, easy-to-fill tanks, fewer trips to the store with the Epson EcoTank printers, less frustration for you. And by the way, Epson, everyone knows, makes the best printers. I mean, that's just done deal. EcoTank is changing the way people print. Get the compact, lovely, super powerful Epson EcoTank printer for your home or office, and you can just fill and chill. Check out Epson.com/EcoTankLeo today to by the way, that's a special address, and please use it so they know you heard it here. Epson.com/EcoTankLeo. If you want to know more, you can transform the way your home or office prints, do away with out-of-ink frustration, and get the best printers on the market today. Epson's EcoTank printers. But hurry, because the offer is ending soon. Oh, I didn't even tell you the offer. Well, let me tell you the offer. Now through September 30th, free overnight shipping. If you use the promo code EcoTankLeo, all one word, EcoTankLeo, EcoTankLeo, at checkout for any EcoTank printer. Offer valid within the 48 contiguous states. Exclusions apply, subject to availability. That's for any EcoTank printer. Epson, EPSON.com. Do I have to spell Epson? You know Epson. Epson.com/EcoTankLeo. EcoTank printers, they're so awesome. Just fill and chill. Epson. Exceed your vision. Now here's two people whose vision sees farther than anyone else.
Has been exceeded.
Never exceeded. Never equaled. Always amazing. Paul and Mary Jo. But let's talk about my favorite topic in the world, .NET Core 3.0.
Finally. Oh, actually, we should just mention real quick. There have been two 20H1 builds in the past week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Since we last gathered.
Didn't mean to dump out of that conversation so quickly.
No, it's okay. Just to hit it. And then just while you were talking, I saw that Microsoft has released a new 19H2 build. It's only fixes, including fixes that came out on Patch Tuesday. Yep. For the shipping versions
of
Windows 10.
So 19H2 hasn't come out yet. 1909.
Right, but they have 6 days to make that happen, so we're fine. Everything's fine.
If they really RTM in September, as you would think, but you remember what happened with the May update? Didn't that RTM in April?
Yeah. So the thing we should remember is what happened last year at their October event, where they suddenly announced, "Hey, we're shipping 1809."
Yeah.
And we were like, wait, you guys never even put that through release preview. What's going on? They shipped it fast, then they had to pull it back. Remember? That thing was a disaster.
Oh, we don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So there is a Microsoft event in 1 week, and
so I must be on some insider thing on my Go, because I was just looking. I thought 1909 came out because I got it on here. But maybe I didn't know.
You must be on Insider.
Maybe I'm an insider.
I bet you are.
I must be. How else could I have received it?
Yep.
All right. Well,
so I think if you're on whatever the Windows Insider program for business, you can request 19H2 now in release preview and in slow, I think.
So is this the last time they're going to use the year and months 1909? They're going to be 20H1 from now on.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, or you just start using the code names, right?
What is this?
The problem is, the problem is they have 4 different ways of identifying each one of these things, right?
Oh, okay.
Well, no, you need like a version number, and so obviously these things all have a build number, and that's probably the ultimate version number. You know, the actual build number.
Yep.
Right, but
those always go up, and so they make sense or whatever. Yeah.
But next year is going to be a disaster. 2003 is the next one.
Yeah, we don't want
Windows 2003. I mean, it's Windows 10 version 2003.
I know, but still, don't you think that's ripe for confusion?
Yep. Yeah, of course. It's perfect for Microsoft. Yeah, we'll see what they do. I like for whatever it's worth, 19H1, 19H2, like that kind of naming is clear, but there's a letter in there. And that may be problematic for...
I feel like I did not... I must have signed up for it, right? I feel like I did not, but I remember when I went to the update, it said, would you like...
Are you on the go now?
Yeah, it's doing an
update. So you can check right now.
I can't. It's doing an update. But as soon as it's done, I will look, because this was the cumulative update for 1909. But I'm pretty sure I went to the updates, and it said, oh, would you like 1909? And I said, yeah. But I thought it was out. No. Well, let me look. It's not out. Why would I sign up for the Insider program? Why would I do that?
I don't know. Why not?
I must have been dreaming.
Or you may just not. You may never have taken your machine out, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Right. Remember I'm sorry.
I was sick of the Insider thing. I said, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah. Done. They're not going to listen to me. I don't want to talk.
Remember the concept of the magic window, which was kind of blown apart when they pulled builds back and they screwed everything up. If you haven't seen this yet, if you go into settings and then update and security and then to the Windows Insider program page, there is a new switch there. It says stop getting preview builds.
Yay.
And what you can do is opt this device out of flighting, which is a terrible term that nobody understands, so who knows why that's in the user interface. But anyway, when the next major release of Windows 10 is installed. And what that basically means is you don't have to worry about the magic window because you can enable it now. And whenever that magic window does occur, you don't have to know that it's occurred. You're going to go back onto the normal Windows 10 update schedule. That's actually a neat feature. So it's like, I want to test this version of Windows, but once it ships, I want to stay on this version of Windows. I don't want to be on the next version. And that's a really smart, that's a nice switch. That's good to know about.
All right.
So are you in there now?
No, I'm still 30%, 81%, 12%, 52%, 7%.
All right.
It rebooted and then it said now it went back to 30%. I don't know what's going on. It's just working on updates. It almost makes me miss all your files are where you left them.
Yeah.
No, nothing will make you miss that.
So let's talk dev. Oh, did you want to mention the Bluetooth thing? Did we leave that out too?
No, I didn't mention it explicitly. It's just they're just making further improvements to that Bluetooth Quick Connect feature, which is actually pretty cool, by the way. If you have I think it's mostly Surface peripherals, but any modern Bluetooth device, you should be able to connect to it without going through a bunch of pairing back and forth on each device. It's like a quick pair kind of a thing. It's something you see it on other platforms too, but it's kind of a neat feature. They're further streamlining that. That was one of the new features in last week's build, I think.
I should give a little plug to Steve Gibson's Next Security now, because he's off to Europe doing a tour around his user authentication protocol Squirrel. And so we pre-recorded his next Tuesday's episode, and it's going to be Steve looks for a good sync solution.
Oh, boy.
Because his needs are a little weird, because he would use OneDrive or Cloud, Google Cloud or whatever, but he wanted Trust No One fully encrypted end to end. Of course, because he's Steve Gibson. So I think he found a good solution. Anyway, that's next Tuesday. If that'll come out. If you don't get security now, you should get that one. It's an interesting episode. I'll give you a hint. He didn't pick OneDrive. It's gonna be a little teeny weeny hit.
That's okay.
He didn't pick that. He looked at it.
All right. I'm going to convince you guys that .NET Core 3.0 is important.
Please do.
I am.
I believe you.
Please do.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So we know that Microsoft back in 2000-ish came up with .NET, and the original version of .NET was supposed to be kind of cross-platform, but it was really just Windows only. And the .NET framework was the basis for, things that happened since then, like WinForums and WPF and the Longhorn stuff, and on to the present. So with .NET Core, they're making it truly cross-platform, and this is actually key to this. Remember we should talk about like One Windows, and now we talk about Windows Core. Mm-hmm. What this does is it kind of extends the programming layer that used to be at the core of Windows to basically every kind of computing platform that there is, from mobile through Xamarin to the web through via ASP.NET and Blazor to the Mac to Windows. It's everything, and that's what's kind of cool about it. It is that one core, idea, but just expanded. It's almost like they're finally realizing the vision of .NET as it was originally announced, but it took them like 20 years. And if you didn't watch it, it's a little boring, but they did a virtual conference thing where they introduced .NET Core, and they had people from Microsoft come out for each one of those parts, and they built the same application again and again and again on different platforms using the same source code base. And it was kind of a small process to get it to work everywhere. And that's the beauty of .NET Core. And .NET Core, of course, now just becomes .NET, and that will be .NET going forward. So if you write it, just looking at Windows specifically, if you're going to write like a Windows desktop application in the future, you can use any framework that you choose. It could be Windows Forms, again, WPF. It could be UWP if you want to use that. It could be Win32, whatever. These capabilities will be available to you regardless of which one you use. So it's kind of universal as well. It's the first version of .NET Core to support Windows desktop application development. So it's actually kind of a major step toward this vision that they had 20 years. I think it's a big deal.
I also think it's a big deal. You just said the word Blazor, because I don't think we've ever talked about Blazor on our show.
I'm about to become the world's biggest Blazor fan. And the reason is... Yeah,
hold on. First, let's say, what is Blazor? Right.
Yeah, what is Blazor? So Blazor is a way. So all of these things. So .NET Core, if you look at the different ways that it plugs into all of those platforms I mentioned, and some I didn't, like IoT and whatever else is out there. This is the way to get .NET, and more specifically in a way, C# into the web, right? The idea is that you have, like we talk a lot about like PWAs, for example.
By the way, how's that going, by the way? Because
very slowly.
We did talk a lot about it, and I've been waiting. I'm excited.
Well, right, but so from the let's say you well, okay, now we're gonna have to step back even further. So
just before you step back, let me just say I am on the release preview.
Yeah, there you go. That's why you have it.
So that's the least.
And by the way, right below there, see that switch?
Yes, I'm switching it right now.
That's the thing I was just talking about. Yeah. So if you want to get off of this
preview
train,
builds. Yeah.
Yeah. So as soon as this thing goes public.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Just call it Paul Thurrott's window closer. That's a
also they should get rid of the word flighting because no one knows what that means.
I know. Just say testing. Yeah. Testing.
So stay on a retail build of Windows, but get a sneak peek at ongoing development of that. That's like the slowest ring of insights.
It is.
Oh yeah, and by the way, don't read that description because that has nothing to do with release preview right now. That is not what release preview is.
That's not what I'm getting.
That's what it used to be.
So I should have gone back to slow, but you know what? I'm flipping the Paul Thurrott switch.
No, slow and release preview are the same thing right now.
But that's not how they say it.
No, Leo. It's not really always, but it is.
Leo,
1982 has thrown everything into chaos.
Yeah, it's like that description that is in the user interface and the shipping version of Windows is incorrect.
All right, I'm restarting, and I
because
trust
Microsoft is hilarious. So, all right, so I got to get through this before I forget all of it.
.NET.
So
C#.
Well, but
PWA.
Let's step back though, just web apps, right?
Yeah.
So you're using Chrome on Windows or the Mac or on a Chromebook, or you're using the new Edge or whatever. It doesn't matter. And a lot of what you're doing now is happening in a browser. It doesn't really matter to you probably if those things are web apps or just web pages or sites or whatever. You'll have some mix and match of both. Chrome allows you and the new Edge allows you to pin those things to the taskbar, to the start menu, well, not the start menu, to the desktop or whatever, and access them like they're apps. You can say run as a window, and you don't really care what's behind it. if there is something behind it that makes it more app-like, that's a PWA, right? So it can run offline, it can do notifications, it can do other things. Those are PWAs. They're more sophisticated, and they work more like apps or like real apps. But you know what? To the average user, nobody cares. So I guess you could, be worried that PWA has not taken off like we thought it would. It absolutely hasn't. But web apps are still the biggest thing in the world. So, it's kind of like whatever. It doesn't really matter. But for the Microsoft stack specifically, 23 years ago-ish, 24 years ago, Microsoft came up with this thing called Active Server Pages and the first version of IIS, like their web server. And I was really heavily involved in that stuff. And what that was a way to write scripts on the server running in JavaScript or VB script that could access databases and could pump live information, dynamic information out to the browser. What the browser saw was just plain HTML. So today we would call that like standards-based HTML. There's no weird codes. You don't need like a plugin. You don't need like a certain browser for it to look right. It will look the same everywhere. It was wonderful. And they evolved that over time to ASP.NET. And by that time, I was no longer a developer, so I never really played around with that. Blazor is literally the modern version of this. Blazor is a way to write C# code intermingled with HTML on the server, but what gets pumped down to the client is just plain HTML that will run everywhere. No one sees any special codes or weirdness. You don't need special browsers, plugins, etc. It's the modern version of that thing I was doing 20-something years ago. It's wonderful.
Is it supposed to replace JavaScript? Is it like Blazor the replacement for JavaScript or no?
Yeah, it's completely, there's lots of replacements for JavaScript, right? So TypeScript in a way is a replacement for JavaScript. Sure. It's another way to do it. So if you are remember, one of the things I often said about Microsoft with developers, one of the things they really do well is provide people with a path forward, right? So if you have a certain skill set, if you are a .NET developer, you can get into mobile, you can get into IoT, you can get into the web. There's all this stuff for you. There's all these opportunities. There is still something called ASP.NET Core, right? Yeah. That still exists. But that's essentially, obviously there are components you can use on the server and so forth, but it's essentially still kind of like a script-based solution. This is like compiled C# code. It's the same code you could write in a native application, but it's running up on the server, and it's just pumping out HTML. Remember I said, this came up a couple weeks ago, at a PDC in 1990-something, late 90s, Microsoft said that HTML was going to be the presentation layer for everything in Windows. And remember I brought this up. I was like, this never happened. And it never it didn't. It never happened. That's what Blazor is, right? I mean, we're gonna have C# running on the server, and we're gonna generate HTML. So if you look at the traffic that's coming to the browser, they don't know anything about that nonsense on the back end. It's not nonsense. The actual software code that's happening on the back end.
Right.
So it's not going to replace. It doesn't necessarily. It's not like the replacement for JavaScript. But if you're a Microsoft-oriented developer, it is one option. If what people are really looking for is normal HTML that runs in the client, like a normal website, but it plays to your strengths because you get to use Microsoft's backend technologies and C#. So I didn't know anything about Blazor like 3 days ago, and now I'm like completely.
I kept hearing about it, but every time I tried to figure out what it was, I was like, I don't know if I can figure this out. I'm not sure.
It's evolving, right? So eventually, Blazor becomes completely, I think it's called WebAssembly based, right? Like today it's just server side. And I cannot explain what the difference is there, unfortunately. Although I suspect by next week I probably will be able to. But Blazor is something I'm literally looking into right now, and it was part of that announcement this past week about the .NET Core,
ASP.NET Core 3.
Yeah, because they revved everything. It was like Visual Studio, Mac, and PC. The languages C# and F# were both revved. ASP.NET, Entity. I can't think of the full name of that.
Entity Framework.
Entity Framework Core. The whole stack was updated. So I actually think .NET Core is huge. I think this is I think and a few years ago, when they first announced it, I was like, okay. It seems like it's too little, too late. Like you brought this thing open source and truly cross-platform.
Right. That's when they forked .NET Framework and .NET Core, right? And that was also kind of confusing, right? It's like, oh, wait, so you're not going to update .NET Framework that much anymore, but everything now is this. But most everybody's using .NET Framework, right? So
functionally, yeah. And functionally, they're not going to update .NET Framework at all going forward, right?
Anymore,
they'll be, yeah.
Like almost in maintenance mode or whatever.
Yeah. And actually, Scott
they're not going
Hunter,
to kill it.
No, in fact, I think he literally said, we're going to support it forever. Right. Now, that's probably literally not true. But he, in the Microsoft, we're talking about their support lifecycle has contracted dramatically, I would say, in recent years since the Windows 10 stuff. I don't know if they're going to support it forever, really, but they're going to support it for a long, long time, for sure. They're not going to force everyone to go. But depending on what you're doing with the .NET Framework, there is the possibility that you could convert it over to .NET Core, and they actually have tools to let you do that in certain circumstances, depending on what kind of code you're running.
Exciting. No? Exciting
Not
times.
Huge. I think it's huge.
Exciting times.
Developer Weekly right here.
And I don't know about you, but I immediately downloaded that new font.
Oh, yeah.
See, that's the big...
I like, you know what? I collect programmers' fonts. It's a weird thing I do.
Yep.
And this one's quite nice.
Cascadia Code.
Cascadia Code. It's quite nice.
Good name, too.
And it's free, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think this will ship inside of that new terminal program too, right? And I'm sure in Visual Studio Code and in Visual Studio itself.
May I ask what may be a very dumb question? Why do programmers care so much about fonts?
Oh my God, Mary Jo!
Because you're staring at that and nothing but
I know.
That for
hours.
Well,
first of all, it has to be
hours.
It has to be a fixed space, like a what do you call that? It
has to be monospace font.
Monospace.
But it also has to be really legible. You don't want to confuse ones and L's, zeros.
You're always indenting things, so it can't be. You can't use Comic Sans.
Actually, there is a Comic Sans code, which I love.
That's funny.
But it isn't really monospace, so it looks a little weird.
Yeah.
But it is for coding. Yeah, there are.
As a lover of Notepad, Mary Jo, you should
be into fixed width.
I don't
fonts.
care what font I use, guys. I just see words on a piece of paper.
You're probably using, Microsoft Sans or something like that.
I don't even know what I'm using. Let's see. What am I using?
I'm using font.
It's not Lucida.
I'm using Lucida Sans type. Blah blah blah.
Lucida was designed for on screen.
Okay.
And that's kind of
I don't know how I picked
Cascadia
that, but
is
that's
too.
what I use.
Because programmers' fonts it's not about printing. It's always about how they look on screen. So subpixel rendering is important. You might notice they support ligatures, which some programmers like coding ligatures. So if you type equal, it actually makes one big long thing. Greater than or equal becomes like, I could go on and on about. Don't get me started on programmers.
Is a tab 4 spaces of 3, Leo?
Tab is tab, baby.
Thank you. That was a trick question. It's not spaces.
I really was curious because when I saw them make an announcement and so many people tweeting it, I'm like, there must be a reason people care about this.
Oh, do we care? Oh,
yeah, I guess you do. Okay.
I'll just show you my programming font folder, just so you know, so you believe me. This is all the stuff, and I collect it. So Anonymous, there's the Comic Code, Courier Prime Code, Courier Prime Sans. And
do you switch them around?
Well, you just keep looking. For a long time, I really liked Fira Code Retina, Hack, Consolata. Input.
I use Consolus on Windows.
Consolus is very good because it comes with Windows.
Very close to the Lucida font.
These you all have to download, which is kind of annoying. But I'm really kind of a fan of this new Input Mono. That's an open source from a pretty well-known foundry. I can go on and on and on. Profont, Sheldon. There's one called Sheldon after Big Bang Theory. There's a lot of.
Is it overrated?
Nice yes.
Sorry.
Bazinga. I'm a big fan of Fira Code Retina. That's a very legible, nice font.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So this is why, Mary Jo, you're just sitting. You're staring at it as a text screen.
I would say, Mary, for all of the weird tech stuff, this is something that I'm surprised you're not more into. The fonts, monospace fonts.
Me?
Well, but she's not even using a monospace. She's just using a Lucida Sans.
Yeah, but she's using Notepad. It is a monospace.
Lucida is a very nice font.
Folks, I don't. If you switched my font today in my notepad, I wouldn't notice.
Okay, but so
I
in
bet you
Notepad,
would.
as in any text editor, there is this wonderful thing that occurs if you're viewing a font. It depends on the dot pitch of the screen, et cetera. But let's say it's at like 12, pixel, 12 points or whatever.
Right.
You go up to 14, and it becomes it's almost like semi-bold, and it looks so crisp and wonderful. That doesn't just give you a little feeling of joy in your heart.
Remember, Paul used to be a designer.
I know. That's the problem here. I have no design elements in my entire body.
Right, but I mean, you do look at the text. I mean,
I do, but I just see the words. I know you guys think I'm making that up when I say that, but I don't.
No,
I just
believe
see
you.
words.
I just feel like there's this empty hole in your heart, and that it needs to be filled with fonts.
Okay. You know what? Just for you, I'm going to switch the font in my notepad and see how it affects my life.
Just change the size.
The size, type size. Okay.
Actually,
that
that's
first.
nice. As you get older, big fonts, type size is really
Mine
nice.
is set by default on 16.
It's a little small.
Yeah.
Bigger?
I'd make it
22,
18 or
perhaps?
22, yeah.
Just go up a little bit. Just sometimes you need to just bump it.
Yeah.
Just a bit.
My
It's
terminal
kind of
is,
neat, the effect that it has. And you can see
It
it
takes
in
up
the
too
little,
much room, though, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It
Well,
depends on how. Yeah, that's the trade-off. You don't see as much of your stuff. So
I
that
really
is the
like it.
trade-off.
Okay. I'm going to try it, though, just as an experiment.
I usually set my terminals pretty big. I'm Fira Code Retina 18 right now on my terminal, but that's a 1080 screen, so it also depends on the screen.
I'm just going to give it a whirl.
Okay.
I'll report back
big
next
things.
week.
You know what it does? It relaxes the eyeball.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is good. That is good.
If
you
feel
use
rested.
an iPhone and your heart of you
it's
have bad
horrible.
vision,
Yeah.
one of the biggest tips is you can enable bold fonts.
Yeah.
When you do that for people, they're like, "Oh my God!" Like it's like this is,
You've changed
it's such
my
a huge
life.
difference. Yeah, it's a little thing, but it matters.
It's
a lot.
interesting because on the new iPhone in the setup, they may have done this last year too. One of the very first things you do is choose the zoom. Do you want it big or little? And of course, I immediately choose big because for me, it's not trying to get more on the screen. It's comfort and
you want to
ease
be able
of
to actually
reading.
see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As much as I like to be able to read a 1-point font, I just
Right.
We're old.
whatever. Well, that's part of the
We're
reason
all
why these big screen phones are so nice too, because you can combine those two things. And of course, mine looks like a Fisher Price thing for kids.
Yeah,
It's like 3
you can
icons on the
overdo
screen
it.
because
You can
everything's so big,
overdo
but,
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can definitely overdo it.
Yeah. Okay. I learned something new today. Learned a couple new things. Blazor and
my
Cascadia
love of
code.
Blazor and my love of fonts, monospace
Yes.
fonts. Don't care about the other fonts.
No,
No.
those aren't worth anything. Let's see. Microsoft has begun shipping OneDrive extended storage plans. How extended is an extended storage plan?
Two terabytes.
Yeah, but you
good.
already could go up to 1 terabyte, but now they'll sell you storage for an additional terabyte if you're an Office 365 subscriber, consumer
Yeah,
subscriber.
and
It's
that's
hard to use more than a terabyte for Office.
Well, I mean, honestly, I bet by this time next year I will have to buy additional storage on OneDrive.
Really?
Yeah. I'm up in I might have just crossed the 900 megabyte threshold.
Wow.
I just happened to see that on the web version the other day.
I think I use like 2% of my storage.
I can probably delete a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. But
If you
can.
back
So
up
now you can.
photos, you use it. If you start backing up media.
Yeah. Right.
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
It is, right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but before now, a lot of people who wanted to buy additional OneDrive storage weren't really able to do that, right?
Right.
And now you can buy it in increments of, what is it, 200?
I think that sounds right. It's like 200,
200
400.
gigs. Yeah, 200 gigs, that's an extra $1.99 per month. And you can go up to the 1 terabyte, which would cost you $9.99 per month if you want to add. So a couple things to know. If you're in Office, this is for Office 365 home and consumer subscribers. And you know how with the home version, you can have up to 5 users, I believe, on your
I
plan?
think it's 6 now, by the way.
6.
But yeah, at least 5. Yeah.
Right. Only the original user can buy this additional storage. So it can't be an additional terabyte for everybody who's on the plan.
So just so you know, Mary Jo.
Yes.
1 terabyte of notepad text.
That's a lot of text.
1 terabyte of notepad text would be, let me see if I can put the commas in here, 916,259,689 pages.
Yeah,
that's a billion, almost a billion pages.
Yeah, so that's probably why I'm not using much.
That's almost the size of a Neil Stephenson book.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I think, if you just, you don't need all that much storage for text files.
Well, you are going to have photos.
It's photos,
I back
music,
up my photos
movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, 2 terabytes seems to be the kind of going standard for a lot of these services. In fact, I think Dropbox, you can only buy 2 terabytes. Remember they used to have all these different, you can only buy 2 terabytes now.
Well, the thing that's odd about this is Google came out with that Google One plan sometime in the past year, and they go up to, is it 20 terabyte or 10? It's some crazy number.
They're fairly cheap. Yeah,
I mean, compared to the $100 a year we're spending now, it's pretty expensive.
Almost everybody's around 100 for 2 terabytes per year.
Yeah.
I bought, I kind of went crazy because when Steve did his sync thing, one of the things he talked about had a Linux client, and they also had a lifetime subscription. Like you pay one flat fee of like $300 and you get 2 terabytes for the rest of your life.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So I bought it.
How long does he think he's going to live?
Yeah. No, I bought that one. It's really the life of the company, obviously, but
sure.
But they've been doing all right, and I thought lifetime. That's kind of cool. I never have to think about it.
And it's 2 terabytes, so that's. I mean, you're basically paying for a year and a half, up front.
It was worth it.
That's not not that bad at all.
I think it ended up coming up to 3. You buy 3 years ahead of time.
Yeah.
Then you would be. You have the rest of your life. And I figured, the company's going to last more than 3 years.
Betting on yourself there, aren't you? It's like a life insurance policy.
Well, what it really is offsite backup, honestly. It's cheaper than any other form of offsite backup if you think of it that way.
Right.
And they've got synchronization tools for Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS. It's a company called xCloud. So, and I've been pretty happy with it. They are not, though, what Steve picked because they're not end-to-end encrypted. They have an encrypted folder. You could say anything in here is end-to-end encrypted, but most of it's not. And that's so, otherwise you can't do a lot of things.
Oh, speaking of which, you guys might have seen, Microsoft added that feature to OneDrive, what is it called?
Personal Vault,
encrypted.
you thinking? Yeah, Personal Vault.
Yeah. So that's gone live, and they're advertising it now. So if you go to OneDrive on the web, you might see an advertisement on it. If you don't, you'll see a Personal Vault icon in your root of your storage, and when you click it, it will tell you what's going on there.
So is it live for everybody?
Oh, I thought I got it. So maybe it's not. Maybe it's not
I don't think it is. I think it's still rolling
so you don't
out.
See it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no. Somebody asked me from Canada who was supposed to be among the original people to get it. He said, "I don't still have it." And Stephen Rose chimed in and said, "Everyone will have it by the end of the year."
I got you. Okay. So
yeah.
I look at I have the same thought about this I did when they announced it, which is like, shouldn't this just be what OneDrive is? Shouldn't the whole thing be like this?
Yeah.
But anyway, it is happening at least.
Yeah. It's happening.
What's happening? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
The Personal Vault on OneDrive. That's the special encrypted area.
Yeah, that's the same thing xCloud does. Yeah, I like that actually.
But it's only a part of it.
Well, remember, if you do that, you then all of the nice features like being able to play or look at an image without downloading it to your machine go away. Because then you have to just anything you want to see or do or dedupe or whatever, you have to download it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess what I meant by that was I don't think all of OneDrive should be treated like your personal vault. I think you should be able to arbitrarily point at anything in OneDrive and say this should be held to that
instead of moving it into the personal vault.
Yeah, because you might have like a an organizational scheme where you have passwords related to something in a travel folder or whatever it is, and maybe you just want to organize
Well, you can always, zip it with a password and then upload it or something like that. Do that locally.
Oh, I do have the personal vault. I see it.
Yay.
Yeah. So if you click on it, you get a little list of like what it means.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to use that for sure.
Yeah.
I like having encrypted storage because, for instance, you don't want to put your tax returns on a public, even though it's secure-ish.
Right.
You don't want to put, there's just things like my PGP keys I like to store, but I don't want to put them in the cloud.
Yeah.
If I can avoid it.
Right. So like Microsoft stores your BitLocker keys up there. That would be an obvious thing to put in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does Microsoft, here's a question, actually, good question from PC Guy 8088 in our chat room. Does Microsoft have the keys to the personal vault? I mean, is it trust no one? Is it only
They've answered this before, and I'm forgetting what they said.
It makes no sense otherwise. It has to be.
Yeah.
That they don't have
I don't know.
key.
I can't say for sure, but I bet it is. Yeah.
That's what you want, obviously. Encryption's meaningless if the company that stores the file can open it and look at it.
I'm trying to see what they said, because I remember this did come up.
Everybody gets a terabyte automatically with Office 365, so I just use that. It was pretty easy for me. I was pleased because I have a personal OneDrive account as well, but it was pretty easy for me to sign up to put my enterprise OneDrive on my personal machine and have them both be available, which is good.
Yep, you can do that on mobile too.
Yeah, that worked.
You're ruining one of my you're ruining my app picks. But yes, this is
more importantly, what is data dignity? I saw that today, and I thought that is I don't know what that means.
It's a terrible name.
Yeah. It sounds like you're dying with dignity, right?
This was a horrible name. All right, I'm gonna show you how I found out about this. So, Data Dignity is the name of a team at Microsoft that is looking at helping users get control of all the data that all of the sites and apps around us collect about us. So the dignity is we're giving you back your dignity by putting you in charge of your own data, right? So here's how I found out about this. This week in the New York Times, there was this interactive feature about, I think his first name is Jaron Lanier.
Jaron Lanier, yeah.
Lanier. Who's a famous guy in virtual reality, and he's also a chief scientist at Microsoft.
Oh, so he's at Microsoft now? Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
He's also the guy who wrote the book, You Are Not a Gadget.
Yes, he did write that.
He went from being this super advocate of VR in the 90s to like kind of anti-tech a little bit.
Yes, right.
Oh, I'm so glad he's doing this. That's great.
Yeah, so the feature...
I trust him.
Yeah, the feature was him talking about how we're all guinea pigs, right? And he's like, you're giving away your biggest asset, which is your data. You're not even like charging anyone for it. You're just saying, okay, Google, okay, Microsoft, here you go, right?
Preach.
Yeah. So I'm listening to it, and then he uses this word in the middle of it, data dignity, this phrase. And I'm like, I've never heard that phrase. So then I searched for it, and then I found his site, which is also Microsoft site called theartofresearch.org. Wow. I looked at that site, and then it has a thing. Microsoft is creating a brand new data dignity team headed by Christian Leensberger. Looked up, who is Christian Leensberger? He works for Kevin Scott, who's the CTO of Microsoft. So the plot keeps getting thicker, right? I'm like, what's okay. Then I found out by searching his LinkedIn profile what he does. He does a lot about incubating machine learning and AI products sponsored by Microsoft's senior leadership team. So this guy is way, way up there, right, in the hierarchy. Then I looked on the Microsoft career site, and of course I found a job that mentioned this whole thing.
Mary Jo, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
During this research, were there wigs or disguises involved, or did you
both?
And a mustache.
Both, guys. I don't like to put all my trade secrets out there, but you know. Yeah, so then I contacted Microsoft because I remembered I had written an article earlier this year on something codenamed Project Bali, which was a personal data bank Microsoft is creating to give users control of all the data collected about them. So I sent them a note and said, hey, I bet this has to do with this. Project Bali, data dignity. Can we talk about data dignity? And immediately was shut right down, and we are not talking about that.
Wow.
Which is funny because that website that Leo was just showing literally said, welcome, feel free to poke around.
Yeah, but we're not telling you anything.
Right. So
looks like you poked around a little too much.
I know. Yeah. So this is all about data privacy, which is a very hot topic right now. And what do you bet we hear more at Ignite about this?
Yeah. But, you know, Google did with the takeout. This reminds me of Google Takeout. And it was one guy, Brad Fitzpatrick, who really championed it all the way through Google. And I love it. If Jaron Lanier's doing this, I'm all for it. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. So you're going to be able to have your dignity back and your data if Microsoft prevails.
Thank God.
Yeah. But the interesting part is, how are they going to make it so you can charge for your data? Because this is another piece of this, right? Like, you shouldn't just be giving it to Google for free or another company for free. What if you could say, hey, Microsoft, you want this data about me? How much will you give me for it? Or here's the standard rate.
Like
I will give you my data. Yeah.
I went
give
with
you my
Amazon
data if you give me this.
So do you think that, well, first of all, this requires an industry-wide
Yes, it does.
Standard of some kind. It requires buy-in from all the other guys.
It does.
And do you actually think that the end game here is you get to choose who or which services?
I do.
Okay. Wow.
Right. And so it'll be more attractive to users to work with companies who are willing to pay you something, even if it's like, fractions of cents for your data, than it is. It's kind of like Bing Rewards, right? We'll pay you to search. It
is literally exactly like Bing Rewards.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I give up some childhood memories today, so we're going to the movies.
I think this is going to be really interesting to see how this evolves. And it was just weird because I just heard the words when I was listening to him, and I'm like, what is that? I've never heard Microsoft say that before. So yeah, that's how I found it. And immediately was turned away. Turned away at the door.
Again, you were literally invited in, just like a vampire, and then denied.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, good. I like this idea. I think it's a good idea. I'm not crazy about the name, but you know what? It's memorable. It
requires buy-in. This is the big thing. But actually, if you think about it, this ties into this next thing.
Yes, it does.
The Amazon Voice Interoperability Initiative. Right now, why would the number one maker,
Project Samuel L. Jackson?
No, this was before that, and slightly less important, but still important. Why would the number one maker of digital assistants create an initiative that seeks to partner with all of the other companies involved in this market, so that you can buy gadgets of whatever kind, like Echo speakers or whatever, and depending on what key phrase you use, you'll bring up a different assistant.
Why
would the market leader do that?
You know who's not on here?
Well,
Google
and Apple.
But Google was approached by Amazon. It just came too late for them to join for the announcement. So I suspect Apple
they would? You think they would? Because honestly, what this looks like to me is Amazon building a moat.
Oh, interesting. Well, okay. I think of it as, it looks like it's a little more open than that, but whatever. I mean, it's inarguable that they're number one today.
Harman Kardon was the company that made the only Cortana device ever.
That's right. And Microsoft's the only other maker of digital assistants. Well, Baidu might have one too, but Microsoft's
Samsung's
the only one
not on there, right?
Nope.
No Samsung.
No, but I have to think that they will be approached if they haven't already as well. So I guess the thing here, again, first of all, we've got antitrust breathing down Amazon's back, right? And I think that was maybe the impetus for this. But like the data dignity thing, right? This kind of thing becomes important when enough of the major players do sign on. And so we'll see what comes of this. But this is kind of interesting. And for the people who are kind of worried about Cortana getting shut out of everything, I mean, this might be this way to dramatically expand the availability of Cortana on devices all of a sudden. Wouldn't it be interesting if you could, like Amazon has this event today, they just announced all these great new Echo devices or whatever, and you're like, well, I'm a Cortana user or I'm a Siri user or whatever it is, and I would like to buy that speaker, but I don't use Alexa. What if you could buy it and use your own thing on it? It's kind of counterintuitive, but it's interesting.
Well, remember, Microsoft already has a relationship in place with AWS around Cortana and Alexa partnership, right? And when they announced that a couple of years ago, the way they explained it was, Microsoft, are not really doing consumer stuff with our digital assistant. but we're going to do business stuff. And Amazon at that point was not doing business stuff with its digital assistant, but that has changed because there's Alexa for work, right? So I think the thinking was we're both going to specialize in different areas, and there's enough room for everybody for a piece of the pie.
Yep. And right? Look, I don't think most people would think this way, but it is possible. You might say, hey, Apple's assistant, I'm going to ask you this question because you know about this kind of thing. And hey, Microsoft's assistant, I'm going to ask you because you know about this kind of thing. I don't think that's necessarily the right thing, but I will say that when you compare this to the original approach of Amazon and Cortana working together, kind of ponderous, because you would say, hey, Amazon's assistant, ask Cortana if, or whatever the phrase was. Like you have to construct these kind of convoluted sentences.
Right.
This kind of thing probably makes more sense. So, we'll see. We'll see if Google, Amazon, Apple or Samsung or whoever joins in, because that would put it over the top. It could solve some problems for Apple, right? Apple makes this AirPod thing that nobody wants to spend money on. What if I could buy these great, a great set of Amazon speakers for the same price as one of those Apple things, but I could use Siri on it? You never know. We talk about Microsoft selling Samsung phones with Microsoft software in it. Apple could sell Amazon speakers with Apple stuff on it. Yeah, I have a overly positive view of the future. It's kind of a Star Trekian thing, but you never know. Just saying.
And very unusual for you. Very upbeat.
It's just possible. It's possible.
Okay. Should we just move ahead? Let's move ahead.
Sure.
I want to talk about the branding thing that happened last week. So a couple of users on Twitter saw
I was just getting
overnight.
I apologize.
No, that's okay.
It's okay.
I had a little.
We can talk.
It was getting a little chilly in here, and I thought, I need a blanket and some bouillon.
Is he ever going to shut up about Cortana?
He's like, they're still talking about this thing.
God damn it!
I honestly try to get bouillon or other things only when you are launched into something, and I know it's going to be solid. You guys are going to just talk for hours. But I thought you'd want to go longer with that one. I guess I was wrong.
Right.
Sorry. Okay. So let's move on.
That's all right.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Microsoft 365 Consumer. Is that what you want to talk about?
Yes, I do want to talk about that. So last week, a couple of users on Twitter said they saw overnight their branding on their Office 365 subscriptions magically change from Office 365 to Microsoft 365.
Yep.
That's not something Microsoft has announced they are planning to do.
They switched back in some cases. They
and then it switched back. Right. So what immediately I thought of is, okay, they must be getting closer to doing this Microsoft 365 consumer subscription, because we all believe the main thing that will be in that subscription is Office 365. And so you would think they might want to rebrand everything under the Microsoft 365 label if you were going to have that subscription, right? Instead of Office 365 Pro Plus, you'd call it Microsoft 365 Pro Plus. When I asked Microsoft, they denied this, but all they said was, we have no plans to rebrand Office 365 Pro Plus to Microsoft 365 Pro Plus at this point.
Right. Also, Microsoft 365 Pro Plus is a completely different offering.
Totally.
It just has exactly the same things in it.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So my guess is they're getting closer to that subscription bundle. So they're trying to get out there and start changing the branding under the covers. Maybe they will be announcing that soon, maybe next week. Although, as part of the Surface announcement, they could.
I wonder if anybody has a problem with that kind of branding change, right? Like we're going to subtly drop the Office brand over time. We have this Microsoft 365 offering, which is a superset of that includes other things.
Right.
I think it works.
It gets confusing.
It totally makes sense.
It makes sense, but it's also a little confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're used to Office, but when you think about it, like you mentioned Office 365 Pro Plus, right? So it's a very specific offering. It gives you whatever it gives you. That kind of doesn't matter. Changing it to Microsoft 365, it's an offering directly from Microsoft. It's fine. This particular one is about Office productivity. It involves desktop applications and clouds, cloud storage and so forth. But other versions of Microsoft 365 will include those other things, right?
Right.
Windows Enterprise, the management services and so forth. So I have no problem with it. But what do you think on the consumer side? Do you think
what else is going to be in it?
I don't know what normal people think. Like, do normal people? They all know. Everyone knows Microsoft, right? So there's some value to that. I think the brand is strong.
They also all know Office, right?
That's what I'm wondering. Do they? I mean, they must, I guess.
Yeah.
It's such a generic name, though, right? Because the problem with Office is you really have to say Microsoft Office.
Right.
So we're clear about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you could just drop the Office part.
Yeah. Ultimately, Microsoft's big plan in the biggest scheme of things is everything goes under the Microsoft brand and they stop having all these sub-brands, right? Because they believe it would make more sense and give the company more of a cohesive look if everything was just branded one thing instead of all these different sub-brands. Sometimes I think that works. Other times I'm like, I don't know. Would it work? They're terrible at product naming, as we know.
Remember they were going to rename everything .NET. Windows.NET, Windows.NET Server, SQL Server.NET, Visual Studio.NET, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Turns out having a product name that starts with a period is not necessarily the best.
It really isn't.
It really is not.
It's hard to search for. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, tell me about it.
I know.
It's awful now too because I'm looking up a lot of old .NET stuff these days, and man, it's impossible. You type in .NET into a search engine, it just doesn't.
No.
It's no good.
So, are you guys getting excited about the event? Next week? Yeah.
I'm excited.
What do we know? What do we see coming here?
So we still think there are going to be several new Surface devices announced with different processors. We still think there's going to be a Qualcomm HCX Surface device. We think there's going to be an AMD Surface 3 laptop. We think there's going to be some new Intel Surface devices, but nothing with Thunderbolt 3. And then there's still a very strong rumor that Microsoft is thinking about teasing Project Centaurus, which is the dual screen device they're building, but not announcing it. Kind of like what Google's been doing with Pixel 4. Like, hey, look at this. You can't have it.
Well, except in 1 month you can have it. I mean, that's the problem with the Microsoft thing is we don't know.
Yeah, not till next year. Centaurus is 2020, sometime in 2020.
I mean, I think there will be. I think HoloLens, Surface Hub are going to play a role in this event, and I think that there's going to be a more all-up Microsoft kind of thing, which kind of speaks to that Microsoft 365 bit, because there's, Microsoft software works best, or whatever on Surface hardware, on Microsoft hardware.
At one point, I don't know if you remember this, Microsoft was starting to refer to devices as Microsoft 365 powered, and then they totally backed down from that, and they're like, no, we can't do that.
Well, I was literally just wondering about that in the context of an OS name, right? And so going forward, if you want to drop the Windows name, which might make sense for this new Light OS or whatever, is there a Microsoft 365 name or brand or something that makes sense for that and doesn't sound too ponderous like those terrible names of the past that Microsoft always gets mocked for?
Right. Like Microsoft 365 OS.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like this subscription thing. You check a couple boxes. I'd like a tablet. I'd like to get the Office apps. And I'd like you to manage this thing for me in the cloud. That will be $37 a month for the next 5 years or whatever that works out to.
Yep. I just did a search on m365.com. The domain is for sale.
Wow.
It's for sale. That's funny.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah. I don't know. So I don't know that they're going to talk yet about Light. I don't think this is the right event at all for them to get into here's layers of the operating system and here's what we're doing with the core OS. I just think it's not the right event for that.
Yep.
Even though we would all like to hear about it, right?
Yeah. Right. This is where want and need don't intersect.
Yeah.
Would they do that at
I know. Ignite?
No, that's a dumb. I don't
think that's the right place for it either.
Well, although, again, like, see, listen, you can make a rationalized. This is the problem with this kind of thing.
I know.
You could explain why it makes sense for any event, right?
Yeah,
so the rationale for Ignite would be this is the business audience. These let's say simpler, less complex, easier, more easily managed devices would be attractive to the enterprise.
Yeah.
Maybe this does make sense to talk to them about this. Like, look, we know some people are always going to need these big, expensive, complex, powerful Windows boxes, but we also recognize that people are getting real work done on phones or tablets and iPads and so forth. What if there was a thing like that you could manage better than you can with an iPad, or run better apps than you can with these other platforms, or whatever however they sell it?
I really think they should not talk about Core OS and Lite until build.
Right. On that note, I feel like they should have done it this past year.
Yeah.
Well, there were rumors they were going to, right? But then they couldn't really talk about Core OS and everything around it because they didn't have a device that was using it. I mean, HoloLens 2 uses it, and Service Hub 2X is going to use it. But you want, like, Centaurus to be closer to shipping.
That never stopped Steve Osnowski. Remember, he showed off printing on a Windows on ARM device before there even was one?
True. Yeah.
I mean, that came out great. So why can't we do that again?
Right. Well, you know who is going to be speaking at Ignite is I'm drawing a blank on her name now. She's been the person who's been championing Erin Chappell. Erin Chappell has been the champion of Windows on ARM, and she's speaking at Ignite. So that means there could be Windows content.
That's good. I like that.
But okay. The problem. What's the marketing position on Windows 10 on ARM for the enterprise? Right.
I know. Right.
Better battery life.
It's first line workers. First line workers.
Better battery life. I know, but you're not saving money. Like, these things are not inexpensive.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
Are not
not cheap.
Not cheap.
They're not cheap. Thank you.
They cost a lot of money.
I don't know words. They're not any less expensive than Intel computers, right? So, and there's compatibility issues, and so to me that's a tougher sell than, hey, look, we made a Chromebook.
Even if you got better battery life or more security, I mean, isn't there a something?
Yeah, that stuff's there. I mean, for sure, and sometimes it's like twice as good on the battery life, even better. But and that is important for first-line workers, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if it doesn't matter how long something lives if it doesn't, run the apps you need or whatever.
Well, that's right. The NVX2, I wouldn't even know how much battery life it had because I couldn't use it.
Because
I know.
Right. Exactly. That thing could still be running right now for all I know. It doesn't matter because
it probably is. I charged it once in December, and that was it.
That's right. Right. It's been running slowly ever since.
Well, we'll find out a week from today about how our guesses held up.
Now, Polar Fan in our chat room says that Microsoft put out a tweet.
They did.
An audio teaser. Should I play that?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Means nothing, but.
Yeah, but it's so much fun.
Cue the innovation.
Is it the @Microsoft account? Where is it?
I think it's the Surface account, maybe.
You might want to look at Surface. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, I'm not good at finding things on Twitter, as you might imagine.
I tweet too much to find. Looking at my Twitter stream now, it's like, what?
Microsoft's.
It's in here somewhere.
Here we go. These are the sounds
there it is.
Of the upcoming Surface.
It's the sound of innovation. Hopefully, it's not a deflating balloon sound.
These are the sounds of the event. Ready? Ready for the sounds?
What? Oh.
You know what that is, right?
What?
Oh.
What?
It's the hinge.
Oh,
you remember when they
click.
did the Surface,
click,
original
click,
Surface?
click.
That sounded like typing.
There was
pulling the keyboard off.
Would you say the very beginning of it was them bringing the thunder?
Oh, God. And then there was another one.
It wasn't the clicking sound was the hallmark of the original Surface announcement. Remember the dancing schoolgirls?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. What's that? What's the thump?
Oh, that's the typing sound.
Oh, yeah. So it's okay. You're right. This tells us that.
In other words, you click it in and then you can type.
Though? It sounds like a zipper.
Someone has finally invented a tablet that can replace a laptop.
They left out the sound of fine Alcantara being brushed.
That's right. Right. It's just the sound of a cat purring as you run your hands over the Alcantara.
So, yeah, that's completely tells you nothing.
Right.
Not a zip zilch. Okay. There are a couple of updates to Surface. The Surface Studio Pen latency is better, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. We all have to guess because I don't have one.
I have one in the other room, but Ant's got it. I'll ask Ant. Hey, Ant, is the latency better?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's better.
Way better.
The more interesting one is the third story, which is the Surface Dock Updater tool, which actually right now is called Surface Dock Update. If I remember, they changed one letter, so you know it's different.
I have one of these guys.
Yeah, good luck updating it, by the way. It seems like the way this should work is you have one plugged into your computer and you go to Windows Update, and if there's a firmware update, you just get it.
Yeah, that's how it does for like controllers and other peripherals.
If you ever want to engage in, like, you ever like you're like, I'm just going to drink a lot or do some drugs and watch a really bad movie. That's what this reads like. It's like, what is going on here?
Okay.
This is the most insane updater. I have been trying for days to update my Surface Dock using Microsoft's instructions, which is why I pulled those Surface laptops out of the closet, by the way. I cannot figure it out.
According to Microsoft, to correctly install this tool in the latest firmware update for Surface Dock, you need to give the background service several seconds to check for updates. No prompt will be provided. Then disconnect the Surface Dock from the Surface PC and wait for exactly 5 seconds before reconnecting.
Exactly.
The Surface Dock firmware will normally update the dock silently in the background after you disconnect from the dock and reconnect.
All right. So here's the thing. The way you know that this worked is you check a registry key.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But read the other one. So if the automatic process isn't working, check out the manual process, because that's amazing.
Reconnect your Surface Dock for 2 minutes, then disconnect it from your device. The DisplayPort firmware update will be installed while the hardware is disconnected. The LED in the Ethernet port of the dock will blink while the update is in progress. Yep. Please wait until the LED stops blinking before you unplug your Surface Dock from power. You will need to disconnect and reconnect the dock twice before the update fully completes. Good luck, and God be with you.
So, best wishes.
I spent the weekend in a padded cell trying to make this work, and I got to tell you, I don't think anything happened.
See, the lack of prompts is what is really the problem, because you have no idea what's happening.
Microsoft, let me tell you about a little something called the PC industry. It exists. And what those guys do is they pop up a little balloon thing in the bottom. It says, hey, the firmware in your device needs to be updated. Click OK to do it. And you go, OK. And it's like, hey, you're going to have to reboot or whatever. Yeah, OK. And then it just updates it. Well, what is this? What is this silliness? I condensed that down. There's way more of that nonsense than I even published. Like, it's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah.
2019.
There you go. I see you have a machine that goes ping.
Yes, exactly. Wait for the blinking green light that you will see in a hole in the side of the dock. It literally says that.
What do you get if you update it? Is there anything good?
I know.
Nothing. It just keeps going. Nothing. I mean, it probably works
better. There's no point in even doing it.
Probably not.
I don't understand. This is the improved version of the updater.
Yeah. Sounds improved.
Is it incredible that I'm not insane? Like, I don't. You read these things and you're like, is this a joke?
Like, it's sad because, Paul, you were so cheerful at the beginning of the program.
He was. He started out so upbeat.
So upbeat. No,
I'm reminded of the silliness.
Bringing him down.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do some Xbox. That'll cheer you up.
Oh, God. No, actually, it won't, because the first story.
Oh, no.
Did you see this, Mary? Did you see this?
I didn't see it until you and Brad covered it.
Oh, God, I love this company. So, as everybody knows, the thing that you don't see from Xbox is we sold X number of consoles during this time period. They haven't talked
That would be
hardware
embarrassing.
sales since I think December 2013.
Yeah.
Because they don't sell a lot.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And they never talk profits, obviously. I don't believe we ever get direct revenue numbers on Xbox, but it doesn't really matter because you don't know what that means without profits. So what they have been talking about is, it's like, well, what can we shine a light on that looks good, And one of the things that looked, I guess, pretty good was Xbox Live active users. And this is a number that was up in I want to say it was in the 50 to 60 million range, something like that. And then it started going down. And now they're not going to talk about that anymore. So what they're going to talk about now is a new metric. It's called year-over-year percentage revenue growth for Xbox content and services. And I'll add the word only because the Xbox business is much bigger than content and services, right? It's, in fact, arguably most of it is probably, well, I don't know, maybe it's not most of it's hardware. A lot of it's hardware, but services, obviously, subscriptions, Xbox Live, Game Pass, etc. We're running out of ways to say, please don't look at Xbox. Like what's left after this? So obviously, Microsoft moving Xbox to a kind of a subscription service or whatever, subscription service is the future of the business. This is them indicating, we'd like you to focus on that now. So yes, we're going to see at least one more Xbox hardware console. This is the plan. I mean, the next year sometime, maybe beyond that, another one, who knows? But obviously the long-term future is subscription services, and that's what they would like everyone to look at. And so it's like when the magician kind of, does something over here, so you don't look at where the trick is happening. The trick part is the Xbox console sales, which, aren't happening. And they want you to pay attention to this other thing. So, yeah, there you go. A further lack of, or a further, I guess we'll call it blow to transparency. But there is good news, such as it is. Last week I talked about the games that were coming to the console version of Xbox Game Pass in the second half of September. Today they announced the games that are coming to the PC version, right? So remember, they have 3 versions of Xbox Game Pass. There is the PC version, the console version, and then Ultimate, which gives you both. Actually, they don't do it on a twice a month basis, but twice a month they announce what games will be coming during that half of the month, and sometimes they space them out over time, but they add new games all the time. So they have announced those games. None of them really stuck out in my mind. There was a new Saints Row game, and I can't remember. They weren't that. There were only 4 of them. It wasn't really that big of a deal. And if you're a Minecraft fan, you're getting a character editor, and it's just as PC as you would expect. You can be fat or skinny and look like, you can make your little 8-bit guy look more like you. So it's kind of, like a Memoji or a whatever, like an 8-bit Memoji, I guess we'll call it. Who knows? It's available in the beta versions of Minecraft across multiple platforms. I think it was like PC, Android, Xbox, and Switch, if I remember correctly, and will be coming to everybody sometime in the weeks ahead. As Mary Jo said, we say. We do. That's our way. Yep, weeks ahead. Everything's coming weeks ahead. Some of those weeks are next year, but still weeks ahead.
In the coming months or in the weeks ahead, they both are ways they refer to things when they don't want to give you a date.
Yep. It's coming.
Coming soon. Soon, TM.
Soon. Is there anything more to say? What else? Yeah. The Minecraft character editor I've played with, I like it.
Yeah, I haven't.
My kids
have not looked at it. I've just looked.
What, they're doing it in VR too, because they can play Minecraft in VR.
Oh, that's actually, I should say. Sorry, you're right. They actually designed this for Minecraft Earth. And once they started working on it, they were like,
everybody should have this.
We got to put this everywhere. This is really neat. So that was the genesis of it.
Yeah.
Was the Minecraft Earth
Minecraft
version.
Earth is not out yet, is it?
I think it's in preview on.
Oh, maybe that's what they're playing.
Android or iOS? I don't remember. I thought there was an early version on one platform.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, because I would love to play that. Now that I'm not playing Harry Potter or Pokemon Go, I need a new game.
Pokemon Go is still the #1 game by revenue.
Wow. Yeah. I'm not surprised. Lisa continues to play it. I don't understand why. All right. We can go right into the back of the book if you want with Paul's tip of the week.
I can blow through this kind of quick.
like your tip of the week. I do.
It's been an interesting week for developer resources. Two of these are video series. One is actually more of a traditional kind of web-based thing. But Microsoft, coincident to the launching of .NET Core, has released a series of kind of 101-style videos for their top .NET technologies. So they have different video series. There's over 80 videos in total. There's several series. So there's a series for C#, the language, .NET Core, ASP.NET, Xamarin, Desktop, and .NET, et cetera. It goes on and on. There's a bunch of them. Those are hosted by, it's Scott Hanselman and Kendra. God, I forgot her name. I'm so sorry. Kendra Havens. I like these guys a lot. In fact, both these people are fantastic. If you're not a beginner, do not watch these. They're kind of painful because they kind of adopt that teacherly tone where they're like, "What's that little red circle in the debugger? It looks like a stop sign. It does look like a stop sign." There's that kind of thing. But but if you don't know about this stuff, and as I kind of implied earlier, I really think this .NET Core stuff is going to become super important as we move forward, and it's going to be central to a lot of what Microsoft does cross-platform. There's some neat stuff in there, containers, entity framework core, Visual Studio, ML.NET, .NET for Apache Spark. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, so it is worth looking at. I've only gone through two of the series because again they're a little painful, but they're really well made, et cetera. And if you don't know anything about this stuff, it's kind of a nice launching point. A week earlier, sometime late last week, they also released a free video series again for beginners for learning Python, and that's kind of an interesting thing for Microsoft when you think about it. But there it is if you want to learn Python. And then Google, not apropos of anything Microsoft, but they released two web-based developer courses, which I think they made them with Udacity, but they're making them available for free on their own CodeLab site for learning. Is it Kotlin or Kotlin? This is their open source replacement for the Java language in Android development. So if you want to learn Android development using their latest language choice, you can do that at I think it's CodeLabs. Whatever the URL is. It's the Google CodeLabs website has that stuff now. So it's kind of a neat thing. I will say, by the way, if you want to learn C#, Bob Tabor has an excellent course video series on, I think it's called C# for the Absolute Beginner, which you can Google. It's available on YouTube. It's available on Channel 9. They just updated it this past July, so it should be relatively up to date. I know they just came out with a new C# language, but as far as the basics go, I mean, I think that's probably a more comprehensive course. So that would be something to look at as well. But it's just kind of a neat week for, developer resources. Don't cry, Leo. It's okay. He's all choked up.
No, it's just my bouillon went down the wrong tube. It's okay. I'm completely with you. I think learning how to code is a great thing.
Yeah.
Python is a very easy one to learn. Kotlin is an interesting language. I think that's great.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn
C#,
so
it's Kotlin.
Kotlin.
Kotlin is to Android as like kind of Swift is, I guess, to iOS. It's kind of the new thing.
Yeah, it was a couple of Google I/Os ago. They gave it first-class status instead of Java. I can't remember. I think it compiles to Java, but maybe not. But
it compiles to the Java like JVM.
Yeah, the JVM. But it's more functional, which I'm a big functional language fan. So
also not owned by Oracle, which I think is a big draw.
Yeah, I think for Google, couldn't be huge.
Yeah.
And it's statically typed, which that helps you with the code reliability. Yeah, you can compile it to JavaScript and native code via LLVM.
Oh, that's
cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So cool. Yeah, it's a first-class citizen in Android Studio.
Yeah,
so it means
I think is the first choice now.
I think that analogy is very apt. It's like Google's Swift. Yeah.
Yep.
Although Google has a ton of languages, Apple only has one or two. Google has infinite number. They're always working on new stuff. How about your app of the week? This is a surprise.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one because I haven't written about this yet, although actually I'm kind of contemplating a series on this as well. So it's Office 365 or Microsoft Office 365 in case the name changes. I still consider this to be the one no-brainer service that Microsoft sells. And I think it's something that most people should probably have. I rely on it. I use it all the time. I go back and forth between the consumer and the business version. One thing I did change in the past, well, actually the past couple of months, is I switched my commercial account over to, I'm going to forget the name of it. I think it's called Office 365 Business Essentials. And this is the one that it's only the web services. So you don't get the downloadable Office applications. So you get the email and then you get the web-based Office apps, right? You get a terabyte of storage, right, which is key. And I think that this is the thing. The central kind of value here is with any of these, well, I should say with most of them, because actually there are some commercial versions that don't give you this, but the consumer versions and the ones that most people would get on the, I would say on the commercial side, you get 1 terabyte of online storage per user per year. I mean, it's just, for the price, Office 365 Personal is $69 retail. You can often get it for cheaper than that. That's a tremendous price just for the storage. Office 365 Home, I believe, is for 6 users, all of whom get a terabyte. It could be 5. It's either 5 or 6, but all of them get a terabyte of storage. And in both of those things, you get all of the Office apps on multiple devices. And this is, for me, I mean, I'm a reviewer, so I use multiple devices all the time, but it's kind of incredible. And the reason I picked it this week was, aside from the fact that I literally have been thinking about this, about writing about it formally, I am writing about using a Chromebook. And I've been doing a small series on that. And it's really interesting when you come at that from like a Microsoft perspective, if you're using Windows. And, we've used Office on phones and things like that. It's not super useful, but it's there. But what's the story like when you have to use it on a Chromebook, right? And so you can use the Android apps, which are pretty good. You can use the web apps, which are actually really good. And that's what kind of kicked this off for me. I was like, I could actually do I could pretty much get all of my stuff done in the online, web-based versions of Office 365. The only minor issue being that you literally need to be online for that to work. And that's something I don't understand why they haven't fixed. They don't have offline versions of their web apps. I suspect that will change, but there's some neat things. If you're a Thurrott Premium subscriber, you can see I wrote, about this Office extension for Chrome, which works in the new Edge as well if you want to do it this way. But it's kind of an interesting front end to your OneDrive storage, the documents you've accessed recently, and also all of the web apps. And so from a single icon up in the toolbar there, you can bring down this menu and access all of the Microsoft stuff on the web as well as all of your documents, and then go to OneDrive if you want to see the rest of it. It's not the way I work. It's a real different kind of a workflow, but it's clear to me just in doing it for the past week or so, 10 days, whatever it's been, like I could do this. Like this is just as efficient as what I do. It's just that I'm used to this other way, and the other way being OneDrive client in Windows that syncs things, and I go into a specific folder and I have documents and so forth. This is another way of doing that, and it's pretty clear. It's just as good. Yeah, there's the picture of the little thing I was just talking about.
I like your wallpaper.
Yeah, that's the Momentum new tab replacement.
Pretty. That's pretty. Yeah. That's pretty. So how much do you do in a Chromebook? This is a great series. Do you really?
Yeah. So what I've been doing is I split my day up. It doesn't really matter what my schedule's like, but on a day that I'm not doing a podcast, like today, obviously 2 hours, I'm kind of beat after this. But most afternoons, I work on a Chromebook instead of Windows now. And I'm kind of it's a little bit it's kind of a kicking and screaming thing because, like I said, I feel like once you get used to it, it's probably going to be fine and it just as efficient, but I'm used to doing things a certain way. So there are certain roadblocks I've run into. But I've been some of the things that are coming. I'm going to be writing about Android apps, about the Linux stuff, about one thing I did was I set up Android Studio, and you can develop Android apps on a Chromebook, which is crazy.
How do you run Studio? Do you have to run Linux or? How do you?
Yeah, so you enable Linux and Chromebook, right, which is the thing you can do now. Yep. And then there are instructions for downloading Android. You can get Visual Studio Code as well if you want to do that. That's a little more complicated.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like this.
That was kind of one of the things missing from a Chromebook. Which Chromebook are you using?
So I have there's 3 different Chromebooks. So I have I have new Chromebooks that are kind of high-end business class Chromebooks from Acer and HP.
Those are nice.
But I also have a Chromebook that only costs $220. It's an HP. It's a low-end thing. So it's a I think it's an AMD chip, 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of eMMC storage. It's a 1366 by 768 screen. It sounds terrible. Honestly, it's great.
Isn't that funny?
You're not going to do it. No, you're not doing Android app development on that machine.
But that's the point. You can't use the PC, your standards of PCs for these devices.
Right. Yep. So I mean, some of the you can get a lot, like the 2 Chromebooks. The other ones, I don't know the exact models. I think it's HP. I don't know it's an HP Chromebook 36014. I think is the name of it. Probably has 8 gigs of RAM.
Yeah, these are really
might
expensive,
have an SSD.
Relatively expensive high-end.
It's a $900, $1,000 machine. Yeah. But you can do Android stuff on that. You can run multiple Android apps on that. Like, it's kind of impressive. But it was interesting approaching Office 365 from another perspective. I think obviously a lot of people that use Chromebook are going to use Google Drive. They're going to use Google Docs. I don't mean to suggest otherwise, but for people coming from Windows and you want that kind of familiarity, or you just have all your, like a lot of us, everyone listening to this probably has all this data up in OneDrive. Like, well, how do I access that from a Chromebook? I can't sync with the file system. And by sync, I mean literally sync, like have a copy of the data offline and so forth. You can access, actually you can't anymore, that went away, but for a while you could access OneDrive from the file system. It was kind of buggy. I hear it's coming back. It's not there now. So what are the alternatives? You can use like an Android app, which works okay. Like OneDrive, you could use the Word for Android, et cetera. Or you could use with the web apps. And so I've been using the web apps. I find for me that they work better. If you use the web versions of the Office apps, Word in particular, you get that new simplified ribbon, which I think is nice, like what you see in OneNote. And it's like I said, surprisingly good. I mean, it's fine. It's different, but it's good.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, so you don't pay for the version of Office that you get the apps because you don't need them.
Right, just the web version is fine.
Use the web apps on
free,
Chromebook.
Right? You don't have to have
apps.
Office 365 account.
I'm not sure if it's free or not, but I'm using the version where I do have this.
I don't think you need an Office 365 account. I think you can just use it.
For basic functionality, I think.
Office.com. Yeah, that could be. That could be.
Okay.
I am paying for it, but you don't have to. But right. I think it's business essentials. It's cheap. It's $5
a month or something.
$60 a year. Yeah, like $5 a month. Yeah. So
that's the version I use on my Windows 10.
Yeah, works great.
Really?
Have you used the web apps?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice.
Because I don't really ever use the apps.
You don't need it.
Like,
yeah.
I use Word if I have to open a document that someone sends me. I occasionally open a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet, but I don't really need the full apps.
Yeah, and actually Google Docs does a fairly good job of opening Microsoft Office Docs by itself.
Yes. Oh, so I should say I've tested that as well. So Google has an extension for Chrome too that makes that automatic. So if you load a Word doc, let's say, it will go into GDocs or whatever it's called and do some kind of an auto translation thing. Like it will actually let you save it in Word format automatically, blah, 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 whatever. But the interoperability there is better than I would have imagined.
Mary Jo Foley, time for your enterprise pick of the week.
Everybody who's anybody is wondering, where is Windows Server 1909? Right? We've been testing Windows Client 1909 or 19H2, whatever you want to call it. But there have been no insider builds of Server 1909 at all in any ring. So I asked Microsoft this week, is there going to be a server version to match the client version? And they have not responded yet. But I've heard from one of my contacts, yes, there will be a server 1909. Basically, it'll be just like the client. It's going to be a refresh of 1903 with a cumulative update added to it to give you some minor functionality. But it's just going to be a very, very much a minor release of server. It's odd that has not been in any of the insider rings, but maybe they think it doesn't need to be because the refresh will be so minor. When is this going to come out? That's the next question. I hear soon. But what I think soon means here is possibly around October, November. So yeah, there is going to be a server 1909.
Nice. And that's not all.
That is not all. Dynamics fans. Right. October 1st, next week, Microsoft will be kicking off Wave 2 of their Dynamics 365 update. So they've already put out a whole package of features, like hundreds of features, hundreds of pages of documentation about what is coming between October and March for Dynamics 365 users. But then this week, they announced there's one more thing. There's actually more than one more thing. There's like 4 or 5 more things. There are a number of new apps that we didn't know about until this week that are also coming as part of this wave. A number of them use AI in them. Like they use the branding Insights to signify it's an app that has AI in it. So there's going to be a new app that we had not heard about called Product Insights. There's also going to be a new Dynamics 365 Commerce app that's going to replace the thing that's currently called Dynamics 365 Retail. There's a new Connected Store app. And I think of all the new things they talked about this week that we hadn't heard about, the most interesting to me is they're starting to brand the AI features that they offer in Azure as Azure AI. So, a lot of times we say, yeah, what's so AI about this, right? Like they say that it's AI infused or that AI has been added. But now it's a little more concrete because when you hear them say in the Dynamics world, this has AI in it, what it means is it has one of several products that are in the Azure family that are AI products. So that includes cognitive services. It includes Onyx. It includes Databricks. It includes machine learning. So now at least we have a little more of a tangible definition of what AI infused means, at least on the dynamic side. But again, a lot of these are in private preview starting October 1, or they are going to be generally available starting around October through December this year. So yeah, Wave 2 is about to hit for Dynamics.
Here it comes. And speaking of... Get ready for a Saison.
Yes. Beer pick of the week is it's a gin barrel Saison.
I'm listening.
Yep. If you like gin, this beer tastes exactly like gin, at least to me.
Wow.
It's from Hermit Thrush. They're in Vermont. They take their Saison beer and they put it in a gin barrel. The gin is also from Vermont that they chose. And what comes out, a lot of times when they age a beer in a tequila barrel or a bourbon barrel, it still tastes heavily like a beer and just a little bit like the spirit. This, to me, tasted very, very strongly of gin. So if you like gin, you will really like this Saison. And if you do not, you should not touch this Saison because it really tastes like gin.
So it's a juniper-flavored beer.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It was really unusual. I liked it because I'm like, you know what? There aren't that many gin barrel-aged beers that I know of. And it was very refreshing and an interesting take on a Saison.
It's good for a Saison, yeah.
So I have a related question for you, Mary Jo.
Yes.
The restaurant bar that we go to regularly that I always send you photos from because they have such an incredible tap beer selection, including that one from Yopen. Remember I sent you last weekend?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was cool.
They tonight are having what they're calling a beer cocktail dinner, where they're going to have some selection, some range of food items, each of which will be accompanied by a cocktail that has beer in it.
Yep.
And I think I have had at least one cocktail with a beer in it. I'm not actually going to this event, but is this a thing? Like, is this like beer infused cocktails?
Yeah, this has become a big trend. Like a lot of places now have craft beer cocktail lists, like a separate cocktail list that uses beer. And so they're usually pretty interesting.
Okay.
Huh.
Yeah, so they think of what is the predominant flavor in the beer. Is it more flowery or is it more like bourbony?
Yeah, actually,
and then they kind of play off that.
Now that you say that, I think the only ones I've had personally are actually, it's always like an IPA kind of for that hoppy effect.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's a cocktail, but what comes through from the beer is like the hops.
Right.
In my day, we call that a Boilermaker.
Yeah, exactly. Except it costs a lot more money.
In my day, we called that a shandy.
Shandy.
We also had words for the people that drank it, but I won't repeat those here.
Only in Baston. Folks, this is the end of this show. Now, next week is going to be a little weird because I forgot why, but I'm not going to be here. That's weird one. Micah will be hosting.
Did we successfully change the time? Did that happen?
I was not
noon
handed a memo, but we were looking, I believe, at noon Pacific. Or no, noon your time. I'm sorry, 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern on Thursday because some event's going on Wednesday. What is the event on Wednesday? I don't even know.
The Microsoft event.
Oh, the Microsoft event. I'll be in Boston.
10 a.m. They will be live streaming it. So you will be doing something with it,
we will be covering the live stream. And what we decided to do is, well, we shouldn't do Windows Weekly before it because you want to talk about what was announced. So that's why we're doing Windows Weekly at kind of an odd time. Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time. That's, I don't know, something early, 1600 UTC, I think. If you would like to watch live, you can do that at twit.tv/live. You can ask your Amazon Echo. Yes, Samuel L. Jackson over here say, listen to Twit Live, play Twit Live, and he'll say, all right. You can also go to the website, twit.tv/WW, or YouTube. We've got a Windows Weekly YouTube channel. Or, best thing to do, get your favorite podcast application and subscribe. That way you'll get it the minute it's available every week. Normally we record on Wednesdays, about 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1700 UTC. That's our normal time. We're going to move next week, just a little programming note for those of you who watch live. Most of you won't even know. Well, you will because you won't get your Windows Weekly on Wednesday. Right. You'll get it later Thursday.
Right.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Paul. You'll find Paul.
Have fun in Boston.
They said,
Boston. I said hi.
What is one thing you want to do in Boston? And I said, I want to hang a light in the old church tower. No, I said I want to...
Or go to Doyle's before that closes, too,
Doyle's
by the way.
Is closing,
that famous restaurant that's been in so many movies. Gone.
I wanted to go to Legal Seafood. I like the chowder.
Yeah.
Go to
I'm a chowder
Union Oyster House. Get the full oyster, as I call it.
I like Union Oyster House, too.
Oyster on a half shell, oyster stew, fried oysters. Nice. That's a meal right there.
Yeah. You started to sound like Forrest Gump for a little bit there.
That's a meal right there.
That's a meal right there.
The full oyster, Leo.
The full oyster. Tarot.com, THURO, You also go to leanpub.com for his fabulous field guide to Windows 10, newly updated for 1903. I guess are you working on 1909?
Yeah, it's already done.
Done? See?
Yeah, there's not that much there.
He's ahead of you. Mary Jo Foley, allaboutmicrosoft.com. That's her ZDNet blog. If you want to know what we're going to talk about next week, just follow along right there. And come back and do this with us next Thursday, and then following that every Tuesday. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Mary Jo.
Thank you.
Episode 640. Bill Gates said no one will ever need more than 640 episodes of Word.
Next week, we're going to prove them wrong.
We'll prove them wrong. We'll prove them wrong. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly.